Hey everyone, Nigel here. If you tuned into our video a few days ago, you'll know that I'm out of the country this week for an unexpected trip. As a result, instead of our usual Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos, we're doing a special roundup compilation. Specifically, we're looking back at some of the darkest crime news stories from 2025. These are cases from the past year that were particularly noteworthy, impactful, or just plain unsettling. This is the second and final part of the compilation. If you missed the first and want to see that, there's a link in the description below. Keep in mind that because this is a compilation video, these segments have not been edited since they appeared in their respective lists, so more news and updates likely have been released since we first covered these stories. As always, be sure to let us know what you think of this compilation in the comment section below, and if you'd like to see more year-end roundups like this in the future. With that out of the way, here are the darkest crimes of 2025, Part 2. Authorities in Lexington, Kentucky say that they are investigating the aftermath of a tragic incident this week after a man went on a horrifying and fatal shooting rampage, a crime which predominantly took place at a local church. The disturbing incident began at around 11:30 a.m. on July 13th, when a Kentucky state trooper conducted a traffic stop on a male driver near the Bluegrass Airport. The man's vehicle had been flagged by an automated license plate reader, and at first it seemed like he was cooperating. However, after being pulled over, he allegedly pulled out a gun and shot the trooper through his window. As horrified witnesses tended to the wounded officer, the male suspect fled the scene, carjacking another victim in the area. Unfortunately, though, this was only the beginning. Once behind the wheel of the stolen vehicle, the suspect drove approximately 20 miles southeast to the Richmond Road Baptist Church. Upon arriving, he entered through the basement back door, where two women, 72-year-old Beverly Gum and her daughter, Star Rutherford, were busy making lunch for their congregation. According to Star, the man, who she identified as Guy House, demanded to see one of her sisters, who was also the mother of his 3 kids. When she and her mom explained that his sister wasn't there, House reportedly replied, quote, "Well, someone's gonna have to die then." Immediately afterwards, he opened fire on them. While Star was not hit and her mother managed to avoid the first shot, sadly, the next round struck Beverly in the chest. She died from her injuries not long afterwards. In the meantime, House allegedly exited the church, shooting 3 other people as he headed outside. One of Beverly's other daughters, 34-year-old Christina Combs, was also killed, while Christina's husband, Randy Combs, and Beverly's husband, Jerry Gum, were seriously injured. Jerry Gum is also said to be the pastor of the Richmond Road Baptist Church. Moments after these attacks, police responded to the scene where they exchanged fire with House. House was killed in the shootout, while Randy Combs and Jerry Gum were rushed to a local hospital. It said that they are now recovering, along with the Kentucky state trooper. At the time of this recording, no motive has been released behind the awful crime, and police have not officially identified Guy House, though his name has been widely circulated in news reports. What we do know, though, is that the Combs and Gum families have been left absolutely devastated by the incident. According to reports, both Beverly and Christina were mothers who were devoted members of their church community. Beverly was known for providing food to the less fortunate, while Christina had a 6-month-old baby at home and was supposed to be graduating from nursing school in December. The investigation continues. Authorities say a Georgia teenager has been charged with the brutal murders of her own mother and stepfather after investigators spent months quietly building their case in what they describe as a chilling and senseless crime. The story begins back on February 20th of this year, when 41-year-old Kristen Brock and her husband, 45-year-old James Brock, were found shot to death in bed at their home in the community of Tyus, about 55 miles west of Atlanta. The bodies were discovered by the couple's 5-year-old daughter, but according to police, it was the couple's older child, 17-year-old Sarah Grace Patrick, who actually called 911 to report what had happened. From the start, investigators noted something strange about the crime scene. There were no signs of forced entry, nothing appeared to be stolen, and only one door was found slightly ajar. Despite the bizarre circumstances, police kept quiet as they worked through what they later described as mountains of digital and physical evidence, collaborating with the FBI and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation's crime lab. Months went by before there was any public break in the case. Then, on July 8th, Sarah Grace Patrick turned herself in at the Carroll County Jail after being charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault. She will be tried as an adult. Carroll County Sheriff Terry Langley and Captain Shane Halsey later explained why it took so long to make the arrest, saying investigators wanted to make absolutely sure that they had the right suspect before filing charges. Among the key pieces of evidence, they pointed to Patrick's emotional speech at her mother's funeral, which they now believe may have been part of an attempt to cover her tracks. At this point, investigators say they still don't know why the teen would allegedly kill her parents. Halsey told reporters, quote, "We don't know what goes through the mind of a child who wants to harm their parents. She's 17. She's kind of been out on her own. She's lived with different family members and moved all over the place." Authorities also added they aren't ruling anything out and say more arrests could still be possible. That being said, after news of the major development this week, it didn't take long for more disturbing information to come to light, specifically details about Patrick's social media activity between the time of the crime and her eventual arrest. In a series of now extremely chilling TikTok posts, Patrick seemingly attempted to draw attention and sympathy towards herself, pleading for, quote, "prayers for healing." She spoke about missing her mother and stepfather so much and wanting to go home, describing her life as a, quote, "horror movie that never ends." In one particularly jarring upload, the 17-year-old made a video featuring a collage of photos of the 2 victims. Over the top of the images, she wrote, quote, "They don't know it, but a year from now, me and my 5-year-old sister would find them wrongfully shot dead in our home and won't get to watch me graduate high school, see me walk down the aisle, and couldn't even say goodbye." While Patrick's TikTok account has since been deleted, in yet another strange twist, a popular true crime TikTok creator has now come forward claiming that Patrick reached out asking them to cover her parents' murders. The message, which was sent on June 3rd, reportedly read, quote, "Look up Brock case." When the creator responded in confusion, Patrick apparently went on to write, quote, "Kristen and James Brock, they're my parents, and out of nowhere, a random Thursday night in February, someone came in my house with me and my 5-year-old sister and left my parents for me and my 5-year-old sister to wake up to." Beyond the horrifying details of the investigation itself, the murders have devastated the couple's community, especially their church family at Catalyst Church. Friends and parishioners describe Kristen as bubbly and endlessly kind-hearted, someone who loved to hug everyone she met. James, meanwhile, was remembered for his constant jokes and for always trying to make people laugh. The Brocks leave behind 7 children from their combined family. Before Patrick's arrest, members of the church had pleaded publicly for whoever was responsible to come forward, saying that the family had already suffered enough. At the time of this recording, Sarah Grace Patrick remains in custody with no bail. If convicted, she faces life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Authorities in Northern California are investigating a deeply disturbing case this week after a man allegedly murdered his young son in a public park, then called 911 himself in what police believe was a calculated attempt to provoke a deadly confrontation with officers. The suspect, identified as 48-year-old Matthias Zyburn of Fremont, was fatally shot by police on Saturday, July 12th in San Jose's Cataldi Park. According to San Jose Police Chief Paul Joseph, the incident began around 3:30 p.m. when a man called 911 reporting that a stranger had stabbed his 9-year-old son. He even gave physical description of the supposed suspect, a description that officers would later learn matched Zyburn himself. When police arrived at the park, they found Zyburn crouched over the boy's body, clutching a blood-covered kitchen knife. Officers ordered him repeatedly to drop the weapon, but he refused. Police say he made several statements indicating that he wanted to be shot, and then charged toward officers with the knife raised. That's when both an officer and sergeant opened fire, killing Zyburn at the scene. In a press conference held Monday, Chief Joseph told reporters that the 911 call was all a part of a disturbing setup, stating, quote, "These officers had no idea that the frantic person on the line was in fact the suspect himself, a deranged man who had murdered his own son." Joseph described the child's injuries as unimaginably severe, adding that in his over 3 decades on the force, he couldn't recall a more brutal case of parental violence. He added, quote, "His call for help was actually a twisted plan to force officers to shoot him. It was a final, desperate, and selfish act." The child was pronounced dead at the scene. Investigators say Zyburn had no criminal history or documented mental health issues, but had moved frequently over the years. Detectives are now working to retrace his steps and determine what may have led to the killing. The shooting is currently under review by the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office, including an examination of police body camera footage. San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan called the killing horrific and heartbreaking, writing in a statement, quote, "I cannot imagine how scared this child must have been when the person meant to be their protector became their attacker." Back at the park, many residents were stunned to learn what had taken place just hours earlier. For now, police say their investigation remains ongoing, but what's already clear is that the tragedy was planned. In the words of Chief Joseph, quote, "The suspect chose the location and pre-planned a confrontation with officers in order to force them to take his life."
Representatives from the LAPD say that dozens of people have been left wounded this week, some with extremely serious injuries, after a driver plowed into a crowd of clubgoers, a disturbing act that is believed to have been deliberate. The whole thing unfolded in the early hours of July 19th, outside of the Vermont Hollywood Club, located near the intersection of Vermont Avenue and Santa Monica Boulevard. According to reports, the club was hosting a hip-hop and reggae event that night, and the area was crowded with people. Many were still lined up outside waiting to get into the venue, while others were milling around or grabbing something to eat from nearby food vendors. However, around 2 a.m., things took a horrifying turn. It happened when, out of nowhere, a silver Nissan Versa sped off the road up onto the sidewalk. The vehicle proceeded to plow into the crowd of people, ripping right through the club's valet stand before finally coming to a stop after crashing into a food cart. It's now alleged that the driver of the vehicle, 29-year-old Fernando Ramirez, was intoxicated at the time of the crash. However, it's also believed that the incident was deliberate. According to witnesses, Ramirez made a U-turn before speeding towards the crowd. He had also been kicked out of the club a short time earlier for being disruptive. When police and other emergency responders were called to the scene, the full scope of the awful situation became apparent. At least 30 people were injured, many of whom needed to be hospitalized. And while so far no deaths have resulted from the incident, that could still change, as 7 people currently remain in critical condition. Ramirez himself was hospitalized with serious injuries, though these were not from the initial crash. Harrowing video footage taken from the scene shows the moments after the disturbing incident, in which the 29-year-old was pulled from his vehicle and attacked by an angry mob of witnesses. One of those witnesses allegedly pulled out a gun and shot Ramirez in the lower back before fleeing the scene. At the time of this recording, Ramirez remains in the hospital, though he's been charged with assault with a deadly weapon. More charges are expected to follow, and the exact motive behind the crime is still under investigation. As for the man that allegedly shot Ramirez, his identity is currently unknown. Police say that they are searching for him and have described him as a bald Hispanic man, approximately 5 feet 9 inches tall and weighing 180 pounds. The man was wearing a blue jersey at the time of the incident and was last seen heading westbound from Vermont Avenue. Anyone with information about the case is encouraged to reach out to the LAPD. Authorities in Los Angeles say that they've arrested a suspect in a brutal double homicide case this week after a longtime television executive and her husband were found gunned down inside their multi-million-dollar home. The victims have been identified as 70-year-old Robin Kay, a former music supervisor and executive for shows like American Idol, and her husband, 70-year-old Thomas DeLuca. The couple had reportedly been dead for days by the time officers discovered their bodies on July 14th during a welfare check at their mansion in LA's Encino neighborhood. The grim discovery came after family members grew concerned when they hadn't heard from the pair. Inside the residence, officers found Robin and Thomas each dead from gunshot wounds to the head, one in the bathroom, the other in a pantry. Blood was found near the entryway, and there was also evidence of a broken window. Here's where things get even more disturbing. Police now believe the couple was killed back on July 10th, the same day officers initially responded to the home following a report of a possible burglary. However, because they didn't notice any signs of forced entry at the time, they never went inside. Incredibly, police sources have since told reporters that the suspect, 22-year-old Raymond Budarian, may have still been inside the home when those officers were initially checking it out. He was arrested just 1 day after the bodies were discovered and has now been charged with 2 counts of murder. Investigators allege that Budarian was in the middle of burglarizing the residence when Robin and Thomas came home and caught him in the act. It's believed that he was inside for roughly 30 minutes before the deadly confrontation occurred. As for the motive, detectives say that the attack appears to have been completely random. Budarian reportedly had no connection to the couple and no apparent ties to any larger criminal organization. Instead, he is described as a drug addict with a lengthy criminal history who acted alone. Other details in the case have since come to light, including the revelation that in the weeks before the murders, Robin Kay had reached out to a private security company because she felt unsafe. It's currently unclear exactly what caused her to feel this way, though what we do know is that she and her husband ultimately didn't follow through with hiring anyone. The home itself, last purchased for $4.5 million in 2023, was one of the largest in the neighborhood and was surrounded by high walls topped with spikes. Still, residents say the affluent Encino area has been a repeated target for break-ins and thefts in recent years. At the time of this recording, Raymond Budarian remains in custody as the investigation continues.
Representatives from Michigan's Grand Traverse County Sheriff's Office say that at least 11 people are wounded this week following a terrifying knife attack at a local Walmart store. The incident unfolded on the afternoon of July 26th at a Walmart location in Traverse City. According to reports, the suspect, later identified as 42-year-old Bradford James Gill, walked into the store shortly before 4:45 p.m. armed with a folding knife. Without warning, he allegedly began stabbing people, seemingly at random. The attack began close to the business's checkout area, but reportedly continued throughout multiple sections of the store. At least 11 people were wounded during the ordeal, with 6 left in critical condition. However, it's said that things could have turned out much worse if it weren't for the intervention of a couple of brave Good Samaritans. Harrowing video footage taken at the scene shows the pair, one of whom was armed with a handgun, confronting Gill in the Walmart's parking lot. They were able to hold him until police arrived a few minutes later and placed him under arrest. So far, none of the victims of the attack have been named, though it's been reported that they range in age from 29 to 85. The majority of the victims were over the age of 60, and thankfully, it's said that all of the injured are expected to survive. As for the motive behind the attack, that's still very much under investigation at the time of this recording, though local media have released some details about Bradford Gill. According to these reports, the 42-year-old has a lengthy history of mental health issues dating back to his mid-teens and also has a criminal history that includes numerous drug and assault-related offenses. In fact, it's been revealed that police were actually searching for Gill before Saturday's stabbing spree, though they have not confirmed why. It's been reported that Gill was homeless at the time of this week's incident and is originally from Sheboygan County, about 100 miles away from Traverse City. Media sources have also pointed out that the 42-year-old appears to have written 2 self-published books on Amazon detailing his life as a born-again Christian. In one of those books, which was released in January of last year, Gill apparently discussed his, quote, astonishing revelation of his own identity as Jesus Christ and the Spirit as Judas Iscariot. Gill has now been charged with 1 count of terrorism and 11 counts of assault with intent to murder. He currently remains in custody.
A Canadian man is facing murder charges this week after his 9-year-old daughter was found dead in a shallow pond in upstate New York. Authorities allege the father made up a kidnapping story to cover up her brutal death. The suspect, 45-year-old Luciano Fratellin of Montreal, was arrested early on July 21st and charged with second-degree murder and concealment of a human corpse. He has pleaded not guilty and is being held in the Essex County Jail. According to police, Fratellin called 911 at around 10 p.m. on July 19th to report that his daughter Melina had been abducted near Lake George. He claimed 2 men forced her into a white van after he pulled over to go to the bathroom in the woods. The report triggered an Amber Alert, leading to a large-scale search involving canine and aviation units, park rangers, and multiple local agencies. But investigators quickly found inconsistencies in Frattellin's story. Specifically, authorities could not find any evidence of the so-called white van, or that Melina had actually even been kidnapped. That's when their attention turned to the father himself. By the following afternoon, everyone's worst fears were confirmed when members of the search team found Melina's body in a remote pond near the town of Ticonderoga, roughly 30 miles north of where she was reported missing. According to police, her body had been partially concealed under a log. Preliminary autopsy results confirmed Melina had died from asphyxiation due to drowning. Her death was ruled a homicide. Investigators now believe the murder occurred the same evening that Fradolin reported his daughter missing. Disturbingly, just hours before, Melina had called her mother in Montreal to say that she was heading home. She and Fradolin had reportedly been on a trip to the United States together since July 11th. The girl's mother, who has been estranged from Fradolin since 2019, told police she had no concerns about the trip and had spoken with her daughter regularly throughout. Authorities allege Fradolin fabricated the abduction story and deliberately misled investigators. He has no prior criminal history or record of domestic violence. Any motive has not been publicly confirmed. The case has now been sent directly to a grand jury, bypassing a scheduled felony hearing. Prosecutors will present evidence to determine whether Fradolin should stand trial. That being said, police are asking the public for any dashcam footage or eyewitness accounts of a gray 2024 Toyota Prius seen along Interstate 87 between exits 28 and 20 between the evening of July 19th and 20th in connection with the investigation. Anyone with information about the case is asked to reach out to the New York State Police. Authorities in Hunterdon County, New Jersey say that they are investigating a truly chilling case this week after a veteran New Jersey state trooper allegedly shot and killed his ex-girlfriend and her new partner before turning his weapon on himself. According to investigators, the situation began on the evening of Friday, August 1st, when 45-year-old New Jersey State Police Lieutenant Ricardo Santos laid in wait outside the home of 33-year-old veterinarian Lauren Samonchik in the Pittstown section of Franklin Township. Surveillance footage from cameras Lauren had installed in her car reportedly shows Santos following her from her veterinary office in Long Valley to her residence, arriving just before 6 p.m. Roughly 10 minutes later, a figure can be seen emerging from the woods near her driveway. Prosecutors say that around 6:30 p.m., Lauren's boyfriend, 29-year-old Tyler Webb, arrived at the home and parked next to her car. It's believed that the pair were then confronted by Santos, who opened fire in what investigators have called a targeted attack. Both victims were fatally shot, with family members later revealing that Lauren was struck in the back while she was trying to run away. Shockingly, police were called to the area just after 7 p.m. that night with reports of gunshots and screaming. However, responding officers were apparently unable to locate the source of the noises and left. The following day, at around 12:20 p.m., Franklin Township Police received another 911 call, this time from Lauren's father. He and Lauren's sister had found her and Tyler's bodies after going to check in on them. When officers arrived, they confirmed that, sadly, both of them were dead. As the investigation got underway, detectives quickly identified Santos, who once served on the protection detail for Governor Phil Murphy, as the prime suspect. The manhunt ended within hours when Santos was found dead in his white Mercedes in Piscataway, about 50 miles away, from what officials say was a self-inflicted gunshot wound. A semi-automatic handgun, believed to be the murder weapon, was recovered beside him. Family members say that the tragedy came after nearly a year of terrifying harassment that began shortly after Lauren ended her 3-month relationship with Santos in September of 2024. Lauren's sister alleges that he stalked her, damaged her car, tampered with her gas tank, placed recording devices in her home, and repeatedly called from restricted numbers despite being blocked. Lauren's mother, Janine, says her daughter tried repeatedly to get help from law enforcement, including attempting to obtain restraining orders. But despite Santos's unhinged and escalating behavior, almost nothing was done to help her. Janine said in an interview this week, quote, "A lot of agencies failed her. She tried to get restraining orders. Nobody called her back. Since last week, tributes for both Lauren and Tyler have poured in. Staff at Long Valley Animal Hospital described Lauren as a dedicated veterinarian and one of the kindest souls you could ever encounter." Meanwhile, the Pinewood Pioneer Volunteer Fire Company, of which Tyler Webb was a member, thanked him for his years of service, writing, quote, "He held the positions of chief engineer, past lieutenant, and past trustee during his time with the company. His contributions to our company and community will never be forgotten." Hunterdon County Prosecutor Renee Robeson has confirmed the case is being treated as an act of domestic violence. For Lauren's family, the loss has been compounded by frustration over what they view as missed opportunities to intervene. As her sister put it, quote, "We need to hold more people of authority accountable." At the time of this recording, the investigation remains active, and it appears the Franklin Township Police Department has not commented on its response, both leading up to and on the night of the killings. Authorities in Jackson, Tennessee say that a week-long manhunt has finally come to an end after a convicted felon accused of killing 4 people was captured thanks in part to a sharp-eyed local resident. Police say that the suspect, 28-year-old Austin Drummond, was wanted in connection with a horrifying quadruple homicide that took place on July 29th in Tiptonville, a town located about 100 miles from Memphis. The victims, 21-year-old James Wilson, 20-year-old Adriana Williams, 38-year-old Courtney Rose, and 15-year-old Braden Williams, were all found dead that Tuesday. Chillingly, an infant related to all 4 victims was discovered abandoned in a car seat on the front lawn of a stranger's home. It has since been revealed that James and Adriana were the baby's parents, Courtney was the child's maternal grandmother, and Braden was a maternal uncle. Investigators say Drummond was already out on bond for an attempted murder charge at the time of the killings. He also has a long criminal history, including a 13-year prison sentence for aggravated robbery and retaliation, and multiple contraband-related charges while behind bars. Following the murders, a massive search effort was launched. Police in Jackson recently released surveillance video showing Drummond approaching a local church late on August 3rd, at which time he was armed with a rifle and wearing camouflage clothing with a brown backpack. The sighting was just 4 miles from where his abandoned vehicle had been found days earlier. By Tuesday morning, the manhunt reached a turning point. Local painter, Ricardo Contreras, says he was working at a home in Jackson when he spotted a figure moving in some nearby woods. Believing it could be Drummond, he called 911. Just 15 minutes later, officers moved in and arrested the suspect without further incident. Contreras says he wasn't after the $37,000 reward being offered. He simply wanted to get the accused killer off the streets so his family could sleep safely again. At the time of his arrest, Drummond was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of aggravated kidnapping, and multiple weapons offenses. Officials say 3 alleged associates, 23-year-old De'Ara Sanders, 29-year-old Tanaka Brown, and 28-year-old Giovanni Thomas, have also been arrested and charged with accessory after the fact, with Brown facing an additional count of tampering with evidence. Authorities say the murders do not appear to have been random, and that Drummond was apparently dating the sister of one of the victims of the quadruple murder. Still, a clear motive behind the disturbing crime has yet to be confirmed. In addition to all of this, authorities say Drummond is also now being investigated for drug smuggling, which he was allegedly involved in both during and after his release from prison. It's also alleged that he has ties to a violent street gang known as the Vice Lords, and may have been getting help from its members during his time on the run. At the time of this recording, Drummond remains in custody as the investigation continues. Officials in Georgia say that they were investigating a disturbing act of violence this week after an active duty Army sergeant allegedly opened fire on his fellow soldiers inside one of the country's largest military bases. The whole thing unfolded at around 11 a.m. on Wednesday, August 6th, when 28-year-old Sergeant Cornelius Radford, an automated logistics specialist assigned to the 2nd Brigade Combat Team, allegedly used a personal handgun to shoot 5 of his colleagues at Fort Stewart, a sprawling Army installation located roughly 240 miles southeast of Atlanta. The base is home to thousands of service members from the U.S. Army's 3rd Infantry Division, as well as their families. According to witnesses, nearby soldiers, quote, immediately and without hesitation tackled Radford and wrestled the gun away before military police arrived. In the chaotic minutes after the shooting began, several soldiers risked their own safety to subdue Radford and tend to the wounded. One non-commissioned officer reportedly jumped on top of him to restrain him, while 4 others worked to stop the victim's bleeding until paramedics arrived. 6 soldiers have since been awarded medals for their bravery, including Staff Sergeant Melissa Taylor, who reportedly sprinted to aid one victim after hearing a gunshot and seeing smoke in the hallway. All 5 victims were rushed for medical treatment, with 3 undergoing surgery. Thankfully, all are now stable and expected to recover. Here's where things get even more unsettling, though. Authorities later revealed that at least 20 minutes before the shooting began, Radford sent a group text to relatives reading in part, quote, "My time is slowly coming to an end. I choose my destiny and my faith. I might not be with my mama, but I'm going to be in a better place. Despite pleas from family members telling him not to harm himself or anyone else, Radford allegedly followed one coworker to a maintenance area and shot him in the chest before wounding 4 more soldiers. The attack happened in the part of Fort Stewart that houses the 3rd Infantry Division's so-called Spartan Brigade, a unit the Army describes as its most modern land fighting force. That same brigade has experienced tragedy before, including the fatal shooting of an Army sergeant by another soldier less than 3 years ago. Investigators say a disagreement between Radford and one of the victims the day before may have played a role in this week's incident, though a clear motive remains unknown. His father has told reporters that Radford had complained about racism at Fort Stewart and was seeking a transfer, but officials have declined to comment on those claims. Radford's record shows no prior combat deployments or behavioral incidents, though he was arrested for DUI back in May, something his chain of command was reportedly unaware of. Former colleagues have since alleged that Radford endured relentless bullying over a stutter since joining the Army in 2018, with some saying others would mock him by pretending to have a speech impediment. Radford is now in pretrial confinement and will likely be transferred to a military detention center. The Army Criminal Investigation Division is leading the probe alongside the FBI. At the time of this recording, charges are still pending. Authorities say a 28-year-old former schoolteacher is now facing 2 counts of capital murder after allegedly killing a married couple in front of their children during a weekend hike. The victims, 43-year-old Clinton Brink and 41-year-old Kristen Brink, were visiting Devil's Den State Park with their daughters, ages 9 and 7, on Saturday, July 26th, when police say they were attacked by Andrew James McGann. Both parents died from multiple stab wounds. The couple's children escaped physically unharmed and are now staying with relatives. According to witnesses, just minutes before the murders, a man matching McGann's description was spotted on the trail. Dressed entirely in black and carrying a large mesh athletic bag, he allegedly gave the witnesses what they described as a death stare and bad energy. Others reported seeing a vehicle nearby with duct tape covering its license plate. Arkansas State Police say the killings appear to have been random, though that's still being looked into. Investigators stated that McGann was injured during the attack, and DNA collected at the scene was later matched to him. They also revealed McGann confessed to the murders during questioning. After a multi-day manhunt, police tracked McGann to a barbershop in Springdale on July 30th. He was arrested during the middle of a haircut, with footage of the arrest being released to the public last week. Items recovered from McGann's home were reportedly consistent with the crime. His arraignment is set for August 14th. While no official motive has been released behind the killings, there is some speculation that McGann might have been trying to get Clinton and Kristen out of the way before going after their 2 girls. This theory, while still very much unconfirmed, emerged in the days following the arrest, when troubling accounts surfaced from McGann's past as a teacher. Parents from a Texas elementary school where he worked in 2022 claim he acted inappropriately and displayed favoritism toward young female students, giving them candy, getting touchy-feely with them, and in one instance, allegedly telling a girl he wished she could be his girlfriend. While the school district claims their internal investigation found no evidence of misconduct, multiple parents at that Texas school have come out in recent days saying they warned officials about McGann's unsettling behavior. And though McGann ultimately resigned in May of 2023, he went on to teach in Oklahoma, passing standard background checks there. Additionally, he was just about to begin a new position in Springdale, Arkansas, when the murders occurred. The tragedy is even more gutting because the Brink family had also only recently moved to Arkansas from Montana looking for a fresh start. They were excited because Kristen had found a new work opportunity and they were going to be closer to Clinton's mother. The family was described as very outdoorsy, so they had gone out to Devil's Den that fateful day to start exploring the area around their new home. Sadly, they had no idea it was the last trip they'd ever take as a family. At the time of this recording, the investigation continues. A small Virginia community has been left desperately searching for answers after a horrifying and completely random home invasion last week left the mother of an up-and-coming country music star dead and her husband seriously injured. The terrifying ordeal unfolded on August 3rd at the Timberville home of 62-year-old Holly and 65-year-old Michael Hatcher. The Hatchers are the parents of rising country music artist Spencer Hatcher, whose career has been gaining national attention in recent years. According to the Rockingham County Sheriff's Office, the nightmare began when a man named Kevin Moses Walker, a 41-year-old from Maryland, suddenly broke into the Hatcher family home just before midnight. Once inside, he launched into a brutal attack. Holly was stabbed multiple times, while Michael was also badly wounded. Somehow, despite his injuries, Michael managed to escape outside the family's driveway, where he was able to retrieve a handgun from his vehicle. Moments later, he fired a single shot, killing Walker and bringing the terrifying rampage to an end. First responders arrived at the scene to find Michael in the driveway with visible injuries and Walker lying dead nearby. Tragically, Holly was discovered inside the home with fatal stab wounds. She could not be saved. Investigators have since revealed disturbing details about Walker's movements in the days leading up to the killing. Just 2 days earlier, he had rented a campsite at Endless Caverns in nearby Newmarket and purchased a large knife from a local Walmart. The following day, his vehicle was found abandoned after he crashed it into a store near the campground. At the time, Virginia State Police deployed patrol cars and even a drone to search the area, but Walker had disappeared. Perhaps the strangest and most unnerving part about the whole thing is that the crime appears to have been completely random. Walker has no apparent ties to the Hatcher family and no known criminal history. He was described by a number of people he interacted with in the days leading up to the murder as polite and unremarkable, someone who had seemingly just come out to the area because he was interested in exploring the local caves. Sheriff Brian Hutchison told reporters that his officers had nothing prior to go on that would suggest Walker was a threat, explaining, quote, "There was no indication of any violence or potential for any violence from the offender that the Virginia State Police became aware of throughout that investigation." At a press conference following the murder, Sheriff Hutchison described the case as unlike anything he had seen in over 3 decades of law enforcement. In his words, quote, "Speaking personally, this is 31 years in law enforcement for me. I've never seen anything like this in my entire career, just the way the unusual, unique, and just crazy situation that this turned out to be." Hutchison said that he and other members of law enforcement are still working to figure out exactly what caused Walker to snap and carry out the awful attack. For his part, Michael Hatcher gave an emotional statement saying, quote, "There's going to be questions that will never be answered, but all I can tell you is we've cried, we've hurt, and we've hugged. And we have found more love than we have ever known has existed between us and between you." Spencer also addressed the tragedy, announcing on social media that he was canceling several upcoming performances, including shows at the VOA Country Music Fest in Ohio and the Rockingham County Fair. He wrote in part, quote, "It is with a heavy heart and overwhelming sadness that, due to a monumental loss in our family, I must cancel my upcoming shows." Meanwhile, Holly has been remembered by her community as a beloved teacher who spent nearly 2 decades working in local schools. In a statement, Rockingham County Public Schools described her as someone who, quote, "poured her heart into her work, positively impacting countless students and colleagues. Her loss is deeply felt by the entire RCPS family." At the time of this recording, investigators say that they are still searching for answers about what motivated the bizarre and senseless attack. So far, though, police say that they can't explain why Walker targeted the Hatchers.
Authorities say the search for a missing child has ended in tragedy this week after the body of a 10-year-old boy was found buried in a shallow grave, and his own mother has now been arrested in connection with the death. The awful ordeal began on August 6th when 10-year-old Jaden Spicer was reported missing from his home in rural Breathitt County. His disappearance triggered an urgent days-long search effort involving police, volunteers, and members of the local community. In the early stages of that search, Jaden's mother, 33-year-old Felicia Gross, appeared to be pleading for her son's safe return. In a handwritten statement shared with local media, she wrote, quote, "We want him safe at home. Please, if anybody see my son, Jaden Spicer, please report it to the Jackson Police Department. We love him very much. Please do the right thing. Call the police. Please pray for us." Members of Jaden's extended family also rallied the public for support. His aunt, Samantha Brunty, even launched a GoFundMe campaign to raise money for a cash reward that could, quote, "help close the case and bring Jaden home." But just 6 days after he vanished, on the afternoon of August 12th, investigators located Jaden's remains in a heavily wooded area of Breathitt County. The discovery was made after Gross allegedly confessed to her role in his death and led authorities to the site herself. According to police documents, Gross admitted that she had given her son sleeping medication, after which she panicked when he became unresponsive. Instead of calling for help, she allegedly placed his body in a plastic tote and buried him in a shallow grave. Officials say she later attempted to coach Jaden's siblings on what to say during their police interviews. Following her confession, Gross was arrested and charged with second-degree manslaughter, abuse of a corpse, tampering with evidence, and falsely reporting an incident. She is currently being held at the Kentucky River Regional Jail. Court records show that this is not the first time Gross has faced legal trouble involving her children. She previously served a 1-year jail sentence for endangering the welfare of the minor. At this time, Jaden's remains have been sent to the state medical examiner's office in Frankfort for a full autopsy. Police say the investigation is still ongoing and have declined to release further details. For now, what's clear is that a small Kentucky community has been left devastated after a search that began with prayers and hope ended with the unthinkable.
What began as a normal afternoon of back-to-school shopping at a Texas Target store erupted into chaos and violence this week when a 32-year-old man opened fire in the store's parking lot, leaving 3 people dead, including a child. The attack unfolded just before 2:15 p.m. on August 11th at the store in question in North Austin. Police have since identified the suspect as Ethan Nineker. Investigators say Nineker randomly attacked 24-year-old Target employee Hector Machuca, shooting him as he collected carts outside the store. Nineker then turned his attention towards other victims. The driver of a Jeep Cherokee just managed to get away as Nineker began shooting again. Sadly, his next targets were not so lucky though. Moments later, Nineker allegedly went over to a gray Toyota 4Runner, where 65-year-old Adam Chow and his wife were sitting with their 4-year-old granddaughter. Both Adam and the young girl were fatally shot, while Adam's wife sustained minor injuries. After the attack, Nineker stole the Chow family's SUV and sped out of the lot. Witnesses described a scene of panic, with shoppers and employees sprinting for cover. At a nearby Jiffy Lube, workers immediately locked the doors after seeing people running from the parking lot in fear. What followed was nearly an hour of chaos across Austin. Police say Nineker smashed into other vehicles on the highway, then attempted to carjack the driver of a water truck. When he couldn't get it started, he allegedly chased a man at gunpoint before fleeing again in the stolen 4Runner. Minutes later, he abandoned that SUV after a crash and allegedly carjacked a Volkswagen. Nineker then reportedly attempted to break into a Waymo self-driving car before throwing a brick through the window of a home belonging to an acquaintance from his Bible study group. By 2:58 p.m., reports came in of a naked man wandering through a backyard. Officers soon located Nineker, who had stripped his clothes off in a portable toilet, clutching a Bible and telling police he was Jesus. When he refused commands, officers tased him and took him into custody at 3:06. Officials say the gun used in the shooting was obtained from family members. At a press conference, Austin Police Chief Lisa Davis said Nineker had serious issues and pointed to possible mental illness as a factor. Court records reveal a troubling history including past arrests for domestic violence, assault, and driving while intoxicated. Nineker now faces 2 counts of capital murder and 1 count of first-degree murder, with additional charges pending for assaults, vehicle thefts, and property damage. He is being held on a $2.5 million bond, and a judge has ordered a mental health evaluation. The loss of life has devastated the community. Hector, described by coworkers as hardworking and kind, was taken to the hospital but did not survive. Adam and his young granddaughter were pronounced dead at the scene. Police emphasize that the victims were chosen at random. Authorities and community members are now grappling with the senselessness of the attack. As one Target shopper told reporters after learning of the tragedy, "We got really, really lucky, and some people didn't."
Authorities in Bristol County, Massachusetts say that a man has been charged with a truly nightmarish crime this week, after the body of his pregnant girlfriend was found buried behind his grandparents' home just days after she sent a chilling text to her sister warning that something might happen to her. 18-year-old Kylie Montero, who was about 11 weeks pregnant, vanished on August 7th after sending her sister a desperate message about her boyfriend, 22-year-old Gregory Groom. The message read, quote, "He threw me on the ground and pulled my hair and strangled me. My phone's at 4%. If I die, it was Greg." On August 19th, nearly 2 weeks after Kylie's disappearance, police arrested Groom. That same day, investigators discovered a body believed to be Kylie's buried roughly 5 feet underground behind a shed on the property where Groom lives with his grandparents. Prosecutors say Groom initially reported Kylie missing on August 8th, claiming she had been with him at his grandparents' house in the town of Rehoboth, but that she left after an argument. However, when police interviewed Groom and informed him they planned to search the property, he confessed. He allegedly told them that he stabbed Kylie multiple times with a kitchen knife before dragging her body into the woods and burying her about 20 yards away. Despite this confession, at Groom's arraignment on August 20th, he pleaded not guilty to murder, aggravated assault and battery on a pregnant person, domestic assault and battery, and witness intimidation. He was ordered held without bail pending a probable cause hearing on September 10th. Family and friends described Kylie as loving and full of life. She had just graduated from Attleboro High School earlier this summer and had been living in a shelter for pregnant women due to ongoing domestic troubles with Groom. On TikTok, she had shared videos about her pregnancy, once describing Groom as someone who treated her like gold. Her sister Faith described the loss as devastating, stating in a social media post, quote, "I lost my sister, and I will never see her again or get a chance to say goodbye or tell her that I love her." A vigil in Kylie's memory was held this past weekend in Rehoboth. Though Groom continues to maintain his innocence at this time, authorities say they have recovered a large amount of evidence at the scene that corroborates his original confession. He remains in custody.
A small town in New Hampshire's Seacoast region has been left reeling this week after a local mother allegedly gunned down her husband and 2 of her young children before taking her own life as well. Authorities say 34-year-old Emily Long fatally shot her 48-year-old husband Ryan Long and 2 of their young children, 8-year-old Parker and 6-year-old Ryan, before turning the gun on herself. Their youngest child, a toddler, was the sole survivor of the heartbreaking incident and was found physically unharmed inside the family's Madbury home. Police responded to the residence just before 8:30 p.m. on Monday, August 18th, after a 911 caller reported multiple people dead inside. Autopsy results show Ryan Long died from multiple gunshot wounds, while both Parker and Ryan Jr. died from a single gunshot each. Their deaths were ruled homicides, while Emily's gunshot wound was determined to be self-inflicted. Investigators confirmed she used a handgun kept inside the house. Emily had been open about her struggles with depression on her TikTok page, where she described her account as a personal diary and referred to herself as a brain cancer wife. Her husband Ryan, a school psychologist at Oyster River Middle School in Durham, had reportedly been diagnosed with glioblastoma, a highly aggressive brain cancer. In her final post, just days before the tragedy, Emily admitted that she was in a rut, but said she was making a point to try to climb out of her depression and establish a normal routine again for the sake of her family. In addition to his work in schools, Ryan was described by neighbors as a devoted father. Community members recalled the couple's children setting up a lemonade stand in recent weeks. Emily had been working at a local Wingett's restaurant chain. The New Hampshire Attorney General's office urged the public not to jump to conclusions about what led to the killings, saying that while investigators are aware of challenges in the household, quote, people should avoid speculating that this event was caused by a single reason or stressor. The case has shaken Madbury, a quiet town northwest of Portsmouth, where neighbors are now mourning the loss of a family once seen as a fixture in the community and struggling to make sense how their lives were cut short. Authorities in Ohio say a weekend trip to the lake for an Amish family ended in tragedy after a father and his young son were found dead, and the mother of the family has now been charged with murder. The chain of events began on the morning of Saturday, August 23rd, when emergency crews were called about a golf cart crash near Atwood Marina West, about 80 miles southeast of Cleveland. Witnesses told police that they had seen a woman driving the cart erratically through the grass, with her teenage children on board. People nearby said they began chasing after the cart and yelling at the mother to hit the brakes because they believed it was careening out of control. Instead, the golf cart flipped over the edge of a stone wall and landed in the lake. 3 of the women's children, her 15-year-old daughter and her 18-year-old twin sons, managed to escape the water safely. The woman was pulled out with the help of witnesses. However, when the first person reached her and tried to help her to shore, she reportedly told him not to assist and instead to pray for her. According to the Tuscarawas County Sheriff's Office, that was the first moment responders realized this was far more than just an accident. The woman, later identified as 40-year-old Ruth Miller, allegedly began making concerning statements about talking to God. Investigators say she later told a witness that she had, quote, given her son to the Lord. Those remarks, along with further conversations with the surviving children, raised immediate concerns about the whereabouts of the rest of the family, specifically the woman's husband, 45-year-old Marcus Miller, and their 4-year-old son, Vincent. That afternoon, search teams began combing the waters around the marina. Tragically, by that evening, divers recovered the body of the 4-year-old boy not far off the edge of a dock. The following morning, a second tragic discovery was made. Around 8:30 a.m., boats with sonar equipment detected something about 50 yards from that same dock. Divers entered the water again and located the remains of Marcus Miller. Both bodies were turned over to the coroner's office for autopsies to determine exact cause and manner of death. Authorities say the Miller family, who live in Holmes County, Ohio, are members of the Old Order Amish Church and had been visiting the lake for the weekend. During interviews with investigators, Ruth Miller allegedly gave troubling explanations. She told deputies that early Saturday morning, she and Marcus had gone into the lake together because they believed God was speaking to them and instructing them to carry out tasks to prove their worthiness and faith. She said they eventually returned to the family's RV, but that Marcus was disappointed in himself for not doing well in what he saw as his test. He then went back toward the lake to swim to a sandbar, but he never returned. Later that same morning, witnesses saw Ruth driving away from the campsite in a golf cart with Vincent in tow. When she came back, she was alone. According to Sheriff Orvis Campbell, Ruth admitted that she had gone to the dock and thrown the 4-year-old into the water because she believed it was, quote, what she needed to do as an offering to God. In further conversations with police, Ruth reportedly said that she believed she and Marcus had to complete spiritual tests, including walking on water and swimming challenges. When they failed, she told deputies Vincent, quote, became the price to pay. Authorities say Ruth also made her teenage children carry out tasks in the lake and told them to pray for their father and brother because they, quote, had gone to heaven. Witnesses confirmed that before the golf cart crash, they saw the mother and teens huddled together and praying at the water's edge. In a press conference, Sheriff Campbell described Ruth as being in the midst of a mental health crisis, calling it a spiritual delusion. He noted that investigators have been aware of some religious issues involving both parents, but that there had never been discussions of harming anyone until now. Ruth Miller is currently receiving treatment for mental health concerns, but authorities say she has also now been charged with aggravated murder in connection with Vincent's death. Meanwhile, her 3 surviving teenage children have been released into the care of relatives. Authorities say a young Ukrainian refugee who came to the United States seeking safety was brutally killed last week, and the man accused of her murder is a career criminal with a long and disturbing history. The crime unfolded on the night of Friday, August 22nd, aboard a light rail transit train in Charlotte's South End neighborhood. According to police, 23-year-old Irina Zarutska was suddenly ambushed by a man wielding a knife just before 10 p.m. She suffered multiple stab wounds, including one to her throat. Despite life-saving efforts, she was pronounced dead at the scene. Officers quickly identified the suspect as 34-year-old DeCarlos Brown Jr. He was taken to a local hospital with non-life-threatening injuries that same night before being placed under arrest. Brown now faces a charge of first-degree murder. Investigators say Irina had only recently arrived in the United States after fleeing the war in Ukraine. Family members described her as someone who left in search of peace and a fresh start. A fundraiser created on behalf of her Aunt Valeria is helping to cover expenses during what relatives call a heartbreaking time. The page has already drawn support from both members of the Ukrainian community and Charlotte locals. Meanwhile, disturbing details about Brown's past are resurfacing. Court records show that his criminal history stretches back to at least 2011 and includes charges of felony larceny, robbery with a dangerous weapon, and communicating threats. He once served 5 years in prison for armed robbery, and after being released in September of 2020, he was arrested only months later for allegedly assaulting his own sister. That incident in February of 2021 left her with minor injuries. Earlier this year, in January, Brown was taken into custody again, this time for misusing the 911 system. According to affidavits obtained by local media, police had conducted a welfare check on him after he insisted that a man-made material inside his body was controlling his actions. Officers told him he was experiencing a medical issue. Unsatisfied with their response, Brown repeatedly dialed 911 until he was arrested. Despite this lengthy track record, Brown was out on the streets last Friday when authorities say he carried out the fatal attack on Irina. The motive remains unclear, and investigators say they do not believe Irina and Brown had any prior communication before the fatal stabbing. In the wake of the crime, Charlotte City Council members have renewed concerns about safety on the city's transit system, with several calling for more protections for commuters. As of now, Brown remains behind bars, facing the possibility of life in prison if convicted. And the family of Irina Zarutska, a young woman who escaped one war zone only to lose her life in her new home, have been left devastated. Authorities in Minneapolis, Minnesota say a back-to-school mass at a local Catholic school church turned into a horrifying scene this week after a gunman opened fire on children and worshipers, a crime that left 2 young kids dead and at least 18 others injured before the shooter took their own life. The tragedy unfolded just after 8 a.m. on Wednesday, August 27th at Annunciation Catholic School and Church in southwest Minneapolis. The service marked the first week of classes for the parish's K-8 school. According to police, the attacker, later identified as 23-year-old Robin Westman, approached the side of the building dressed in black and began firing through the stained glass windows into the pews where children and parishioners were sitting. Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara said Westman was armed with 3 legally purchased firearms, a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. He told reporters, quote, 2 young children, ages 8 and 10, were killed where they sat in the pews. Those victims have since been identified as 8-year-old Fletcher Merkel and 10-year-old Harper Moisky. Of the 18 wounded, 15 were children between the ages of 6 and 15. The remaining 3 victims are adults in their 80s. Witnesses described chaos inside the sanctuary as bullets shattered windows and struck attendees mid-service. Outside, residents in the neighborhood said the gunfire was so constant they thought it might be roof work and initially didn't call police. Video from the scene showed terrified parents rushing to lead their children away from the building afterwards. According to investigators, Westman ultimately entered the rear of the church before dying of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. In the aftermath, disturbing details about Westman's background began to emerge. Court filings show they were born Robert Paul Westman, but legally changed their name to Robin in 2019 after identifying as transgender. Public records listed Westman's residence as a Tudor-style home less than a mile from Annunciation, where they had once attended school as a child. Westman's mother, Mary Grace Westman, also reportedly worked at the parish as a secretary until her retirement in 2021. Police say Westman left behind hundreds of pages of writings, along with a video manifesto posted online just hours before the attack. The documents expressed admiration for previous school shooters and mass murderers, including the man responsible for Sandy Hook, and revealed a fixation on killing children in particular. O'Hara described the massacre as, quote, a deliberate act of violence against innocent children and other people worshiping, saying the shooter's goal was notoriety. Acting U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson echoed that assessment, noting that Westman's writings were filled with hate directed at nearly every group of people, Black, Mexican, Christian, Jewish, and others, while praising mass killers. Thompson said in part, quote, the shooter's heart was full of hate. There appears to be only one group they admired, school shooters and mass murderers. Those in the community, meanwhile, expressed shock. A neighbor recalled seeing the Westmans as a seemingly normal family, hosting gatherings with kids playing in the yard. Westman's uncle, former Kentucky lawmaker Bob Helleringer, told reporters, quote, he was my nephew, and I wish he had shot me instead of innocent school children. It's an unspeakable tragedy. Investigators also discovered that just before the shooting, Westman had uploaded disturbing videos to YouTube, displaying weapons and handwritten notes, many scrawled with messages. Those videos were taken down after the massacre. Officials revealed that Westman had no prior criminal history, though a welfare check for mental health reasons had once been conducted at their home in 2018. More recently, Westman had gone through a breakup and was staying with a friend in the Minneapolis area. Police executing search warrants at multiple properties seized a tactical vest, electronic storage devices, and additional writings. Chief O'Hara emphasized that while investigators will continue to search for specific motives, quote, no evidence will ever be able to make sense of firing into a church full of children. For now, a community is left grieving the loss of Fletcher Merkel and Harper Moisky, while many more children and elderly parishioners recover from injuries. Authorities say their focus is on supporting the victims and their families, and ensuring that the shooter's name does not overshadow the lives cut short inside Annunciation Catholic Church. Authorities in Nevada say that an early morning photo shoot turned deadly last month when a young woman allegedly shot and killed her boyfriend while posing with a firearm, an incident police say may have been influenced by her disturbing obsession with guns. Just before 5 a.m. on Saturday, August 23rd, officers responded to a 911 call about a shooting at a residence roughly 3 miles south of North Las Vegas Airport. When they arrived, they found 23-year-old Mark Gunn sprawled on the sidewalk with a gunshot wound to the neck. Despite desperate efforts from first responders, he was pronounced dead at the scene. According to investigators, Mark had been photographing his girlfriend, 20-year-old Alessandra Blee, during an impromptu photo shoot with friends. Around 4:30 a.m., the group decided Blee would pose with a firearm for pictures. One witness told police that he checked the gun to make sure it was unloaded and removed the magazine before handing it over. After snapping a few photos, one of the witness's girlfriends went inside to change outfits. When she returned, however, the magazine had been reloaded into the weapon. Moments later, the firearm was discharged, striking Mark. Blee told investigators the shooting was an accident, claiming she believed the gun contained no rounds. She also said she had never completed a firearm safety course before handling the weapon. But when detectives executed a search warrant on her phone and social media accounts, they uncovered evidence that Blee had what they described as a fascination with firearms. Messages showed her posing with different weapons and talking about building an arsenal. In one chilling message, she allegedly wrote, quote, "I wish I could shoot people with real guns and get away with it," referencing fantasies of targeting sex workers and the homeless. In another exchange with Mark, when he suggested they use dummies for target practice, Blee reportedly replied, quote, "We gotta shoot someone real. Going to be the tunnels. If it's only one a night, the police will remain clueless." Police also recovered Polaroid photos from the scene, including one of Blee holding a gun and another of a young woman brandishing a knife. On August 26th, Blee was arrested without incident and booked into the Clark County Detention Center. Prosecutors have charged her with open murder with a deadly weapon. A public defender has since been assigned to the case, and Blee is currently being held as she awaits her preliminary hearing, scheduled for October 2nd. The case has left Mark's family and friends reeling. A young man killed during what should have been nothing more than a playful late-night photo session, now overshadowed by disturbing revelations about his girlfriend's fixation with violence.
Police say a prominent Georgia dentist carried out a chilling crime last week, killing his own wife and teenage daughter inside their palatial multi-million-dollar home before taking his own life as well. The grim discovery was made Sunday, August 31st, just after 4 p.m., when officers conducted a welfare check at a mansion inside the gated St. Ives Country Club community in Johns Creek, about 30 miles northeast of Atlanta. Inside, they found the bodies of 52-year-old James Choi, his wife Myung, also 52, and their 15-year-old daughter, Grace. James Choi, a native of South Korea, was a practitioner at Highland Dental in nearby Suwannee. His professional biography describes him as a dentist whose, quote, primary goal is to make each of his patients smile, which he pursues by treating them as he would treat his own family. Outside of work, Choi was known to enjoy golf and spending time with his wife and daughter. Grace Choi was remembered as a gifted violinist and a beloved sophomore at Mount Pisgah Christian School. Just weeks before her death, she performed at Carnegie Hall in Manhattan with the True North Symphony. Her school's fine arts department wrote, quote, "Grace, you are so loved. You make us so proud, and you will always be an integral part of our fine arts family." The family lived in a 6-bedroom estate valued at $1.75 million, with sweeping views of the golf course and access to the country club's private amenities. Flowers and packages were seen left outside their Glencourt home after news of the tragedy spread. Johns Creek Police Chief Mark J. Mitchell said the case has left the community shaken, telling the media, quote, "This tragic incident has deeply affected not only the family and neighbors, but our entire community. We extend our heartfelt condolences to those impacted and ask that the community help them in their thoughts during this incredibly difficult time." Authorities have not disclosed the cause of death and said they will withhold further details to preserve the integrity of the investigation and out of respect for the surviving family members. Mount Pisgah Christian School performed Grace's passing in a statement, writing, quote, "We are heartbroken and devastated to confirm the untimely death of one of our treasured and beloved students, sophomore Grace Choi. We wish to express our deepest condolences and our heartfelt love, support, and prayers to Grace's extended family, friends, and everyone who is grieving with our school community. The investigation into the awful tragedy remains ongoing."
A mass stabbing in a Manitoba First Nations community has left 2 people dead, including the suspect, as well as 7 others injured in what police are calling a devastating act of violence this week. It began in the early hours of Thursday, September 4th. At 3:44 a.m., a community safety officer reported an assault to Manitoba RCMP. Within hours, officers were dispatched to 2 separate homes in the Hollow Water First Nation, where they found multiple victims suffering from stab wounds. Among them was 18-year-old Marina Simard, who sadly later died of her injuries. Police identified the suspect as her brother, 26-year-old Tyrone Simard. RCMP say he stabbed 8 people, ages 18 to 60, all of whom were known to him. 7 remain in hospital, many with critical injuries. Michael Raven, one of the injured, was stabbed while sleeping in his home. His children told reporters his lung was punctured, but he is awake and talking. As police rushed to respond, Simard fled in a stolen vehicle. Just before 7 a.m., his car collided head-on with an RCMP cruiser on Provincial Road 304. Simard was killed in the crash. The female officer driving the police vehicle was rushed to the hospital with critical but non-life-threatening injuries. By 8:15 a.m., Winnipeg's Health Sciences Center declared a code orange, preparing for a mass casualty event. 6 victims were transported by ambulance, while 2 more were airlifted by STARS helicopters. At least 2 underwent emergency surgery. The hospital lifted its emergency code shortly before 11 a.m. Hollow Water Chief Larry Barker, visibly shaken, offered condolences at a press conference. He said in part, quote, "The families were very close to me. My deepest condolences to them right now." He also urged the community to come together and support one another. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew praised the injured officer as a hero, stating, quote, "She stopped a man on a rampage." He added, quote, "We will get through this the way we always do, as Manitobans, together." The tragedy struck exactly 3 years to the day after a mass stabbing at Saskatchewan's James Smith Cree Nation, which left 11 people dead. Leaders there issued a statement of solidarity following the tragedy this week, writing, quote, "From our nation to theirs, we send strength, compassion, and the reminder that they are not alone. We walk together in spirit." Court records reveal Simard had a troubling history prior to this week's attack. In June, he was charged with assault with a weapon and mischief, and was ordered by a Winnipeg court to stay away from his sister Marina, the same sibling killed on Thursday. He also faced older charges of sexual assault and sexual interference dating back to 2017. Records show he struggled with low cognitive function and alcohol abuse, and spent much of his childhood in foster care. Provincial Road 304 remained closed as investigators processed multiple scenes in Hollow Water. A gray, vinyl-sided home surrounded by police tape marked one of the scenes of the attack. Community members gathered quietly at the band office to watch the RCMP's live-stream press conference, absorbing the weight of what had happened. Police say there is no ongoing threat to public safety, but the wounds run deep in the small community of just 1,100 residents. However, many were quick to remind the public that this is not what their community stands for. Among those who spoke out was Christy Williams, whose father is among the injured. She said in part, quote, "This incident doesn't sum up Hollow Water. This is scary for everybody. The community is all shaken up from it." A 16-year-old boy allegedly opened fire at a high school outside Denver this week, leaving 2 students critically wounded before turning the gun on himself. Authorities have identified the shooter as Desmond Hawley, a student who, according to investigators, had been active in extremist corners of the internet for months. Officials claim Hawley was fascinated with past school shootings, including Columbine, and posted neo-Nazi symbols and violent imagery on social media in the days leading up to the attack. The shooting unfolded Wednesday, September 10th, at Evergreen High School in Jefferson County, the same county where the Columbine massacre took place 25 years earlier. According to police, Hawley entered the school armed with a gun and ammunition. He managed to shoot 2 students before secured doors prevented him from reaching areas where others were sheltering. More than 100 officers responded to the scene, and they found Hawley within 5 minutes. He had already turned his weapon on himself by this point and later died of his injuries. The 2 victims, including 18-year-old Matthew Silverstone, remain hospitalized in critical condition. Authorities have not said whether Hawley targeted them specifically or if they were chosen at random. The Anti-Defamation League's Center on Extremism reports that Hawley had been posting since last December on a gore forum where users share videos of violence mixed with extremist propaganda. In one post days before the attack, Hawley posed in the same way as the Wisconsin school shooter who killed 2 people last year. According to investigators, he even made a t-shirt styled after clothing worn during the Columbine shooting. On the morning of the attack, he posted a photo of himself holding a gun and a box of ammunition. Experts say his online activity shows a troubling pattern of what has been referred to as shooter tributes, where new attackers reference and glorify previous killers. Speaking about the incident, ADL Senior Vice President of Counter-Extremism, Orem Segal, stated, quote, "There is a through line between those attacks." Hawley's TikTok accounts, which included white supremacist slogans, were banned after the shooting, but investigators are still looking into how much encouragement he received from extremist communities online. The attack happened the same day that conservative activist Charlie Kirk was killed during a separate shooting at an event in Utah, though it received far less media coverage. We're going to get to that incident in a few minutes, though it's worth pointing out here that both of these crimes appear to have links to deep internet subcultures. For now, Jefferson County officials are urging vigilance and calling for stronger prevention programs. Still, it's important to point out that in this case, effective lockdown procedures and a swift police response greatly reduced what could have easily been a far greater tragedy. A horrifying and deeply upsetting case unfolded in New York City this week after an elderly married couple was brutally murdered inside their own home in what police say was a random attack. It began on Monday, September 8th in the quiet Belrose neighborhood of Queens, just a couple miles from Belmont Park. Around 3:30 in the afternoon, fire crews were called to the home of 76-year-old Frank and 77-year-old Maureen Olton after their ADT home alarm system alerted their son, who works as an EMT with the New York Fire Department. However, what first looked like a house fire quickly revealed something far worse. Inside, firefighters and police found the Oltons dead in what investigators have described as a sadistic double murder. Frank had been tied to a pole in the basement and stabbed multiple times. His body had also been set on fire. Maureen, who used a wheelchair, was discovered upstairs. She had suffered burns so severe her body was almost unrecognizable. Prosecutors later revealed that she was still alive when the blaze was set, with soot found in her airway and a lung, as well as injuries consistent with strangulation. Investigators say the person responsible is 42-year-old Jamel McGriff, a career criminal whose rap sheet stretches back decades. Surveillance footage allegedly shows McGriff in the neighborhood that morning approaching homes under the pretense of needing to charge his phone. While some residents turned him away, he eventually targeted Frank Olton, who was outside working on his car. At first, Frank also refused him entry, but new video shows McGriff forcing his way through the back door. For the next 5 hours, McGriff allegedly committed unspeakable acts of violence on the couple inside their own home before setting it ablaze and walking out with 2 bags. Minutes later, flames could be seen tearing through the residence. About 60 firefighters battled the blaze for under an hour, but the damage was already done. What makes the case even more shocking is what happened afterwards. Investigators say McGriff went on a shopping spree with the Oltons' belongings, pawning 2 of their phones in the Bronx, spending $500 on clothing at Macy's, and even registering a rewards card in his own name. Surveillance also showed him using their credit cards to buy a movie ticket at a Regal theater, where he watched an animated religious film before heading to Times Square. Police were able to track him using those purchases, and by Wednesday evening, sharp-eyed officers spotted him in Midtown Manhattan. He was arrested near Times Square just after 5:30 p.m. When confronted, McGriff allegedly admitted to the murders, telling police, quote, "I killed them. I burnt them." Prosecutors say he made additional disturbing claims that were captured on body camera footage. This was far from McGriff's first violent crime. Back in 2006, he served a 16-year prison sentence for robbery. Since his release, he's been accused in at least 2 other robberies in Manhattan, including one at a GameStop store and another at a Verizon store where he was caught carrying what appeared to be a fake gun. He also failed to register as a sex offender last year, a violation of his parole. For the Olthins' neighbors, the attack was almost beyond comprehension. Frank had lived in the home for 4 decades and was known locally as a passionate Yankees fan. One neighbor told reporters, quote, "That was our conversation. The Yankees was always conversation. It sucks, man. You hear about this stuff happening in other neighborhoods, but when it happens right across the street from you, it's not cool." At the time of this recording, McGriff remains in custody, facing numerous charges, including murder, kidnapping, burglary, robbery, grand larceny, and arson.
Prosecutors in Los Angeles, California say they've charged a man this week with a string of chilling crimes, including the murders of 2 men he allegedly lured through dating apps and the brutal attempted killing of a third. The suspect is 34-year-old Rakeem Prowell of Inglewood. He was already on probation for burglary cases, but investigators now believe his crimes go much further, spanning murder, carjacking, assaults, and even a bizarre burglary spree where he used a rubber mask to disguise his identity. According to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, the first known case happened on July 20th, 2021. That's when 51-year-old Miguel King met up with Prowell after the two communicated on a dating app. Prosecutors say Prowell fatally shot King and then stole his car. It wasn't until August 14th, nearly a month later, that King's remains were discovered in the Angeles National Forest. 2 years later, on August 21st, 2023, a second victim, 53-year-old Robert Gutierrez, also agreed to meet with Prowell after talking online. 2 days later, his family reported him missing. His body has never been recovered, but investigators say they found Gutierrez's car inside Prowell's own garage when they arrested him last week. In February of this year, a third victim, 40-year-old Jordan Andrews, also connected with Prowell through the same app. Authorities say Andrews was tied up, beaten with a baseball bat, and robbed. He managed to escape, but Prowell allegedly chased him in a vehicle and ran him down, breaking his leg. Andrews survived, and his testimony helped prosecutors build a larger case. In announcing the charges, District Attorney Nathan Hochman said, quote, "Imagine the terror and horror these victims felt after being duped into believing they were meeting for one reason, only to face inexplicable violence." Prowell has now been charged with 2 counts of murder with the special circumstance of multiple killings, 1 count of attempted murder, 2 counts of carjacking, 2 counts of second-degree burglary, and 1 count of assault with a deadly weapon. If convicted, he faces life in prison without parole or even the death penalty. His bail has been set at $2 million. If all that wasn't disturbing enough, there's more. Between 2019 and 2021, Prowell was linked to as many as 30 burglaries across Los Angeles, where security footage captured him wearing a creepy latex mask that made him appear like a young white man. Police later found the mask during a traffic stop, and he was convicted in 2 of those burglaries. Right now, investigators have not said whether Powell used the same disguise in the dating app cases. At the time of this recording, he remains in custody as the investigation continues, with police now working to see if there may be even more victims.
People across the United States have been left shaken by a chilling act of alleged political violence this week, after one of the country's most influential conservative activists was assassinated in broad daylight during one of his own events. The disturbing incident unfolded on September 10th, when political activist Charlie Kirk was speaking at the campus of Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. Charlie, who was the co-founder of the incredibly successful and influential conservative student political organization Turning Point USA, had traveled to the school that day as part of a series of nationwide appearances called the American Comeback Tour. Utah Valley University was supposed to be just the first stop on that tour. This particular event was held outdoors in an area of the school called the Fountain Courtyard. Charlie's tent, where he was speaking from, was set up at the lowest part of that courtyard, at the base of some amphitheater-style seating. Shortly after 12 p.m. local time, Charlie entered the venue, where by this point a crowd of approximately 3,000 people had gathered. After briefly engaging with the attendees and throwing MAGA hats to several in the crowd, he started the event. It was set up so that members of the audience could line up to either debate Charlie or ask him questions. Tragically, it wasn't long before things descended into absolute chaos. At 12:23 p.m., as Charlie was in the middle of a debate about gun violence, specifically mass shootings carried out by transgender perpetrators, a single gunshot rang out in the courtyard. Charlie was struck in the neck and almost immediately slumped over in his chair. Moments later, screaming and shouting could be heard from all directions as those in attendance realized what they had just witnessed and began desperately scrambling to find cover and safety. At the same time, several members of Charlie's security team, as well as other bystanders, ran onto the stage. Within seconds, they had picked him up and carried him to an SUV, which rushed him to a local hospital. Given how many people were recording at the time of the incident, the whole horrifying sequence of events was captured on video from multiple different angles. That being said, we highly advise you not to seek that footage out, as it is incredibly upsetting and disturbing. By 2:40 p.m., again local time, President Trump had taken to his social media platform, Truth Social, announcing that Charlie Kirk was dead. And while law enforcement did not comment for some time, eventually the news was confirmed. As all of this was happening, the situation on the ground remained chaotic. Initially, it was reported by the university that a suspect was in custody, though it quickly became clear this was not the case. A man was detained, but it was discovered he was not the shooter. Unfortunately, this was only a sign of things to come. Shortly before 4:30 p.m., FBI Director Kash Patel announced for a second time that the suspected shooter was in custody, only for authorities to have to retract this once again. Not only that, as new information was released, it became clear that law enforcement did not know who they were looking for. However, thanks to the amount of recording that was happening at the scene by attendees, as well as the campus's own security cameras, that had changed by the following morning. Shortly before 10 a.m. Mountain Time, authorities released images taken from some of this footage that showed a young man dressed in dark clothing, sunglasses, and a baseball cap. Earlier that day, it was confirmed that the suspected murder weapon had been recovered, a bolt-action rifle, and later that evening, the FBI released more video, this time of the alleged shooter jumping off a rooftop and running away from the UVU campus just moments after firing the fatal shot. Finally, on September 12th, it was announced that the alleged shooter had been arrested. During a press conference that morning, he was identified as a 22-year-old Utah man named Tyler James Robinson. Based on the available evidence, it's now believed that Robinson arrived on the UVU campus just before 8:30 a.m. on the day of the shooting. After changing his clothes, he headed up to a spot on the top of a building about 200 yards away from the Turning Point USA event, positioning himself on the roof. He then allegedly carried out the assassination before fleeing the scene. At the time of this recording, much has been said about Robinson and his alleged motive for the crime. For days now, social media has been awash with rumors and speculation, much of it incorrect and highly polarizing. And unfortunately, as I alluded to before, it doesn't seem like that's going to change anytime soon. Because while the vast majority of people on both sides of the political aisle have condemned Charlie's murder and political violence of this kind more broadly, there is no shortage of those who are attempting to exploit the situation for political gain, mainly by cherry-picking examples of past incidents of violence and rhetoric and asserting that what happened here is either entirely the fault of the political left or the political right. Currently, more information has come out about Tyler Robinson, though despite this, his motives still remain largely unclear. Still, we're going to try and tell you as much as we can about what is known. Perhaps the most widely reported detail is that there were messages found written on some of the bullet casings recovered along with the alleged murder weapon. The message that by far has captured the most media attention was the one that said, quote, "Hey fascist, catch," accompanied by a series of arrows pointing in different directions. Another message contained the Italian words, "O bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao ciao." Many have insisted these messages mean that Robinson was a member of the far left, owing to the fact that the Italian words appear to reference an anti-fascist song popularized in Italy following the Second World War. However, the other messages are far less clear and appear to reference internet memes and culture. One bullet casing was inscribed with the words, quote, "Notice his bulge, OWO, what's this?" While another stated, quote, "If you read this, you are gay, LMAO." For those unfamiliar, OWO was originally a Japanese-inspired text emote used to resemble the face of a cat. However, these days, the letter combination, along with that phrase specifically, has come to be associated with the furry community. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, consider yourself lucky. Furries are people who have an affinity for animal characters with human characteristics. They will sometimes dress up in so-called fursuits, but there was also a heavy emphasis on animated avatars and cartoon drawings of these characters, often with heavily sexual connotations. And according to some of the most recent reporting, Robinson has been linked to an account on one of the most notorious furry websites called furaffinity.net. This information came on the heels of more reporting that Robinson was in a romantic relationship with his roommate, 22-year-old Lance Twiggs. The 22-year-old is not currently believed to have anything to do with the crime, and police say is cooperating with the investigation. But the fact that Twiggs identifies as transgender has led to further speculation that this might have been part of Robinson's motive for the killing. Still, for as much as some have seized on these details, others have pointed out that several of Robinson's meme references also coincide with another community, a group that calls themselves Groypers. These are people who are fans and followers of far-right influencer Nick Fuentes. Fuentes has notably been a harsh critic of Charlie Kirk's for years, insisting that his political takes are too moderate. Fuentes and his supporters are advocates for the United States to be a Christian theocracy, and in past years was known for calling for his followers to actively disrupt, heckle, and harass Charlie and other speakers at events. On top of this, the Groypers are also known for being heavily embedded in gaming communities and internet culture, and many have pointed out that some of the catchphrases that Robinson allegedly wrote on the bullet casings align more with Groyper memes than anything on the left. Other details that have caused speculation are the fact that Robinson was reportedly raised Mormon and came from a Christian family. It's also been revealed that he was not politically affiliated with either Democrats or Republicans and did not vote in the last election. Some of those who knew the alleged killer say he was a smart and quiet guy, though became far more political and radical over the pandemic. Our point for bringing all of this up isn't to point fingers, but to emphasize that the situation appears incredibly fuzzy and complicated right now, especially because everything Robinson has said and done appears to be steeped in layers of inscrutable irony and internet memes. So anyone who tells you they know 100% what happened here is lying to you. Here's what we do know, though. Charlie Kirk was a married father of two whose children will now have to grow up without their father. And this level of political violence that we're seeing right now in America and around the world is incredibly scary and dangerous. One thing that almost everyone seems to agree on, though, is that the FBI handling of the assassination was slow and unorganized. People from all over the political spectrum, including notable Trump supporters, have criticized the response, especially after FBI Director Kash Patel appeared to take credit for Robinson's arrest when it was reported that his own father had turned him in. Many are now calling for Patel's resignation. Of course, there's also the security at the event itself, which many attendees have since come out and claimed was sorely lacking. The specifics of that are still under investigation, though a number of people told reporters that security was so lax that essentially anyone could have gotten in. Right now, things remain incredibly charged and divisive politically, and the uncertainty around everything that has happened is not helping the situation. It appears that right now all we can do is hope that with more information being released, the collective temperature on all of this can be turned down. At the time of this recording, Tyler Robinson remains in custody. Though official charges are still pending, authorities have already suggested that they plan to pursue a death penalty case against him. Authorities in California have released a major update in a shocking case that we covered just last week after a badly decomposed body was discovered inside a Tesla sedan registered to an up-and-coming singer known as David. If you'll recall, the case began back on September 8th when workers at Hollywood Tow noticed a foul odor coming from a vehicle parked at their lot in the Hollywood Hills. The car in question was a Tesla that had been abandoned for days and later towed from the area. When officers arrived and opened the front trunk, they made a horrifying discovery. Inside of a plastic-wrapped bag were the dismembered and heavily decomposed remains of what was initially believed to be a woman. However, authorities now say the victim was just 15 years old at the time of her death. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner has now identified her as Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Disturbingly, the teen has been missing from Lake Elsinore since at least April of 2024. At the time she vanished, Celeste was only 13 years old. Missing persons flyers circulated back then showed the young teen with long dark hair and a petite frame. According to investigators, when her body was found, she was wearing a tube top, black leggings, and a yellow bracelet, with stud earrings still in place. Disturbingly, she also had a tattoo on her right index finger that read, "Shh," a design similar to one that David has, though it's worth noting that the tattoo is apparently not all that unique. When news first broke about the grisly discovery, a spokesperson for David, whose real name is David Anthony Burke, told reporters that the 20-year-old was cooperating with authorities. At the time, the artist was preparing for a show in Minneapolis, posting to his 2 million Instagram followers as if nothing was wrong. Since then, though, the fallout has been swift. Burke has canceled his U.S. tour dates, including a planned Los Angeles concert and an appearance at the Grammy Museum. Crocs and Hollister also pulled him from campaigns just days after announcing him as the face of new collaborations. Meanwhile, investigators continue to look closely at possible links between the singer and Celeste. Around the time she disappeared, there were rumors online that Burke had been dating a girl named Celeste. Screenshots from fan chat rooms in 2023 seem to show those claims spreading amongst followers. Even more chilling, an unreleased song by the artist began resurfacing online after Celeste's body was identified. In the track, Burke sings, quote, "Oh Celeste, the girl with my name tattooed on her chest, smell her on my clothes like cigarettes." Police have also searched a Hollywood Hills house where Burke had reportedly been staying. According to local media, detectives were seen leaving the property with evidence bags and electronics. Officials later confirmed that multiple items were seized and will be analyzed in the coming days. Despite the disturbing details, no suspects have been publicly named, and police have not yet charged Burke or anyone else in connection with Celeste's death. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner is also still working to determine the teen's cause of death. For her family, the identification brought both heartbreak and grim confirmation. Celeste's mother told reporters she immediately suspected it was her daughter when news broke of a body being found in the Tesla. Loved ones have since launched a GoFundMe campaign to raise money for her funeral, remembering her as a kind young girl whose life was cut far too short. At the time of this recording, the case remains under active investigation. Officials in Pennsylvania say that 3 police officers were killed and 2 others were critically wounded this week during what authorities describe as a brutal ambush at a York County farm. The fallen officers were identified as 39-year-old Detective Sergeant Cody Becker, 43-year-old Detective Isaiah Emmenheiser, and 53-year-old Detective Mark Baker. Another Northern York County regional detective and a York County sheriff's deputy remain hospitalized but in stable condition. Officials say the gunman was 24-year-old Matthew James Ruth, who was killed during a final exchange of gunfire with police. The confrontation stemmed from a stalking and trespassing investigation that began late Tuesday night, September 16th. Ruth's ex-girlfriend's mother had reported seeing him outside her home in camouflage, peering through her windows with binoculars. Trail camera photos captured him armed with a rifle, and his truck was found nearby. By the next day, detectives had obtained a warrant and searched Ruth's home before heading to a farm on Har Road. Around 2:08 p.m., 4 detectives approached the unlocked front door of a farmhouse there. Almost immediately, Ruth opened fire with multiple suppressed rounds from his rifle. Within seconds, Becker, Baker, and Emmenheiser were struck. Another detective and the deputy sheriff returned fire as Ruth turned his weapons on them. Both men were hit in the exchange but managed to fight back. The gunfire moved toward the roadway where Ruth was ultimately shot and killed. When the shooting ended, officers rushed to render aid, but Becker, Baker, and Emmenheiser did not survive. Investigators later found the ex-girlfriend's mother's dog shot dead in the basement. York County District Attorney Tim Barker said the evidence so far indicates that had Ruth's ex-girlfriend or her mother gone to the farmhouse instead of police, they, quote, would have been killed immediately. Ruth had recently been charged with stalking, trespassing, loitering, and prowling at night. Officials said he had no prior criminal convictions, but described the violence as rooted in, quote, the hateful scourge of domestic violence. The Pennsylvania State Police have now convened a major case team to handle the investigation. Colonel Christopher Paris called the killings, quote, unbearable grief for the community, and asked the public to keep the families of the fallen and wounded officers in their thoughts. Representatives from Washington's Chelan County Sheriff's Office say that they believe a months-long manhunt has finally come to an end this week after the suspected remains of a man wanted for the murders of his own 3 young daughters were finally located. If you've been following crime news at all in the past few months, chances are you already know exactly what we're talking about. But just in case you don't, here's a quick refresher. The situation began on the afternoon of May 30th when the man in question, 32-year-old Travis Decker, picked up his 3 daughters from their home in the city of Wenatchee. The girls, 9-year-old Peyton, 8-year-old Evelyn, and 5-year-old Olivia, lived with their mother, Whitney, full-time. She had been granted sole custody of the children since her divorce with Travis back in 2022. However, as part of a court-ordered parenting plan, Travis was allowed to spend several hours visiting with his daughters every other weekend. Travis picked up the girls around 5 p.m. that day, and as part of the pre-arranged visit, was supposed to have them back by 8 o'clock. However, he and the kids never returned. To Whitney's horror, she also wasn't able to reach her ex-husband on his cell phone. Right away, there were concerns for the safety of the children. Though Travis had never harmed his daughters or violated his visitation terms before, he suffered from borderline personality disorder, as well as PTSD from his time serving in the Army. He also had no fixed address, making it difficult to know where he might be. Still, no one was prepared for what happened next. After a search was launched, Travis's white 2017 GMC Sierra pickup truck was spotted abandoned near the Rock Island campground outside the town of Leavenworth. Inside the vehicle, police found food, blankets, a wallet, and car seats belonging to the missing girls. Chillingly, 2 bloody handprints were also smeared on the back of the truck. Sadly, things would only get worse though. On June 2nd, almost exactly 72 hours after all of this began, authorities located the bodies of Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia. The girls were found in an embankment close to the abandoned pickup truck. Their wrists were zip-tied, and plastic bags were covering their heads. It was later revealed that they had likely died of asphyxiation. However, Travis Decker was nowhere to be found. The hunt for Travis lasted all throughout the summer, with a steady drip of reporting revealing new details and minor updates about the case. Most of these had to do with alleged sightings of the 32-year-old, who police believed might have been hiding out in the wilderness. Due to his extensive military training, it was thought that Travis might have been able to survive off-grid indefinitely, though searches also extended as far north as Canada and as far south as Mexico. Throughout the last few months, there have been many false alarms, witness sightings that turned out not to be Travis, as well as possible recoveries that were actually dead ends. As recently as 2 weeks ago, authorities had announced the possible recovery of remains, only for those to later be determined to be animal bones. However, investigators now believe they have finally found the breakthrough they've been looking for. This week, they revealed that AI-powered drones had detected an anomaly while searching a virtually uninhabitable area of Grindstone Mountain in a thick section of trees. When officers made their way to the area, which was apparently quite difficult, they found a large amount of human remains. The remains were reportedly in an advanced state of decomposition and included femurs, 2 feet, and several vertebrae. Police also say they found several items belonging to Travis, including the shirt he was last seen wearing prior to the crime, a pair of Army Ranger shorts, a bracelet he was known to wear, and his favorite brand of chewing tobacco. So far, a positive identification still has not been made, though police appear confident that these are Travis's remains. DNA is currently being tested, and definitive answers should follow. The site of the discovery was less than a mile from where the bodies of the 3 young victims were found back in June, leading many to ask why it took so long for Travis to be found. Police have stated the area was incredibly difficult to search, with Chief Deputy U.S. Marshal Gavin Duffy stating during a press conference this week, quote, "The terrain is extremely complex, some of which is hard to find anywhere in this country. That's what we found. It's incredibly steep, it's incredibly rocky." At the time of this recording, there was a lot of work still to be done on the case, and even if Travis's remains are successfully identified, many questions still remain. We can only hope that as the investigation continues, the friends and family of Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia can begin to get the answers they deserve. Representatives from the FBI say that they are investigating the aftermath of a deadly shooting at a Texas Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility this week after a gunman opened fire on agents and detainees, an incident that officials say showed a, quote, high degree of pre-attack planning. The attack took place at around 6:30 a.m. on September 24th outside of the ICE facility in question in the city of Dallas. According to reports, agents were in the middle of transporting several detainees from a van to the main building when suddenly shots began to ring out. It's unclear exactly how many rounds were fired, though officials from the Department of Homeland Security later said that multiple shots hit the van as well as the facility itself. 3 people were hit during the gunfire, all of whom were detainees. One of those victims was killed, while the other 2 were critically wounded. By the time authorities responded and located the alleged gunman, it was too late to take him into custody. The man, later identified as 29-year-old Joshua John, had turned his weapon on himself. John was found on a nearby rooftop, where it's believed he carried out the shooting with a bolt-action rifle. Surveillance video recovered from the area reportedly shows the 29-year-old driving with a large ladder on his car about 3.5 hours before the deadly incident. It's suspected he used the ladder to get to the roof, where he laid in wait before firing. As for the motive behind the disturbing crime, the FBI says that is still officially under investigation, though they have stated they believe the attack was politically motivated and meant to terrorize ICE agents. To support this, they released an image of unfired rounds allegedly recovered from the scene, one of which had the words "anti-ICE" written on its casing. On top of this, authorities say during searches of John's home, they found several notes written by him which referred to the work done by ICE as human trafficking, and stating that those at the Dallas facility were, quote, people showing up to collect a dirty paycheck. One other note apparently read, quote, hopefully this will give ICE agents real terror to think, is there a sniper with armor-piercing rounds on that roof? Because of this, many were quick to assume John's politics, with Vice President J.D. Vance calling him, quote, a violent left-wing extremist. However, so far that has not actually been confirmed and is actively being disputed, including by John's own family members. Several of the 29-year-old's relatives have claimed that they never knew him to have strong feelings about either ICE or politics in general, telling media outlets they were completely shocked and devastated by his actions. Further reporting states that John had voted in the most recent presidential election, but was registered as an independent. Some have also pointed out the seeming inconsistencies in the shooter's professed motive and his actions, namely that he only shot ICE detainees, not actual agents themselves. Then there's the fact that among John's handwritten notes, there was seemingly one taunting authorities about the lack of information they'd be able to find about him. That note reportedly read, quote, good luck with the digital footprint. What we do know, though, is that there is evidence John had been planning the crime since at least mid-August. During that time, the 29-year-old allegedly searched apps that tracked the presence of ICE agents and did research on ballistics. Apparently, he also had a fixation with the September 10th assassination of Charlie Kirk, having sought out the video of the crime multiple times. At the time of this recording, the whole incident is still under investigation, and none of the names of the shooting victims have been released.
Authorities in North Carolina say a highly decorated former Marine is facing numerous charges this week after he allegedly showed up at a crowded waterfront bar and unleashed a deadly shooting attack, one that left at least 3 people dead and 8 others injured. The terrifying incident unfolded shortly before 9:30 p.m. on September 27th at a pub called the American Fish Company in the coastal city of Southport. According to reports, patrons were enjoying a relaxing evening outside on the waterfront deck where live music was playing, when suddenly things descended into chaos. It's now alleged that the horrifying turn came when 40-year-old Marine veteran Nigel pulled up to the dock on his boat. Moments later, he reportedly opened fire into the crowd of restaurant goers with a short-barreled rifle, one that was equipped with a suppressor, folding stock, and scope. 3 people were killed, while a further 8 were injured. Authorities say at least one of the wounded is barely clinging to life, and that the death toll may still rise. Immediately following the shooting, Edge allegedly fled in his boat alongside the Intercoastal Waterway. He was spotted and arrested around 10 p.m. by the U.S. Coast Guard while trying to load a vessel along the marina in the nearby town of Oak Island. According to town officials, Edge is a resident of Oak Island and has had a number of issues with authorities over the last few years. The 40-year-old, who up until 2023 was legally named Sean de Beauvoir, is a highly decorated Marine who served during the 2003 U.S. invasion of Iraq. During his time in the Marine Corps, he received several prestigious awards, including a Purple Heart. The motive behind the shooting is currently still being investigated, and nothing has been confirmed. However, it's been noted by many reports that Edge suffers from PTSD and in recent years appears to have fallen into a conspiracy theory rabbit hole. According to these reports, Edge has filed a number of strange and baseless lawsuits, including 2 this year in which he claimed he was the target of a, quote, LGBTQ white supremacist ploy. In one of the suits in May, he claimed a local church in Southport was behind a so-called civil conspiracy masterminded by the LGBTQ community and white supremacist pedophiles to kill him because he is a straight man. The other accuses the Brunswick Medical Center of helping, quote, LGBTQ white supremacists who were out to get him because he survived their attack while serving in Iraq. It appears Edge has echoed many of these beliefs in a book he wrote and self-published entitled Headshot: Betrayal of a Nation. The book claims that he was shot 4 times during his military service, once in the head, by friendly fire over an international conspiracy. At the time of this recording, authorities say they are still working to discern Edge's exact motive, but have called the attack highly premeditated. So far, he has been charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, 5 counts of attempted first-degree murder, and 5 counts of assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill. More charges may still follow.
People across the United States have been left reeling from yet another act of mass violence this week, after a second former Marine allegedly carried out a shooting and arson attack at a Michigan church, a crime that left at least 4 people dead and 8 others injured. The awful incident unfolded on the morning of September 28th at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Blanc Township. According to reports, hundreds of people were inside the building for the church's 10 a.m. service and had just finished the congregational hymn when suddenly things were interrupted by a loud bang. The noise was a Chevy Silverado pickup truck which had slammed into the front of the building, one that was allegedly being driven by 40-year-old Marine veteran Thomas Jacob Sanford. Initially, everyone assumed that the crash was an accident, and several members of the congregation ran outside to try and provide assistance. However, when they got close, Sanford allegedly pulled out a rifle and opened fire. The shooting led to fear and panic as worshippers rushed to get themselves and their families to safety. Unfortunately, though, things only became more chaotic when at some point Sanford allegedly set the church on fire, causing the entire structure to burn down. Within minutes, authorities had arrived at the scene and Sanford was killed in a shootout with officers. Sadly, though, by that point, at least 4 people had been killed and 8 others were wounded. It's still unclear if this is the final death toll, as firefighters and other emergency responders stated that they were worried there might have been more victims trapped in the blaze. Authorities say they are also investigating, quote, suspected explosive devices found at the scene. Right now, all of this is very recent, and the situation is still developing. So unfortunately, we don't have a ton of additional information about the case, especially when it comes to Sanford's alleged motive. Frustratingly though, this has not stopped widespread speculation online, with people making completely unverified claims about Sanford's politics. For instance, within minutes, some users on social media were already stating that the 40-year-old had "Stop Trump" signs outside of his house, while others claimed this was incorrect and there were actually signs in support of the president. Many of these users also pointed to the fact that Sanford had 2 large American flags secured to the back of his truck at the time of the deadly attack. Again, though, we want to stress that as of the time of this recording, absolutely nothing has been verified about the motive. What we do know about Sanford is that he was a former Marine. The 40-year-old reportedly served from 2004 to 2008, including in Iraq. During his time with the Marine Corps, he made it to the rank of sergeant. Online, Sanford portrayed himself as a family man and an avid outdoorsman. The 40-year-old posted many pictures of himself hunting and also described his struggles raising a sick young child, as his son had been born with a rare genetic disorder. Despite the lack of confirmed details at this time, what's caught many people's attention is the disturbing similarities between this case and the mass shooting in North Carolina. Not only did the deadly incidents take place just 12 hours apart, but both alleged perpetrators were ex-Marines, and both attacks appeared to be acts of targeted violence. No one is currently suggesting that the 2 incidents are linked, but all the same, the commonalities are eerie to say the least. At the time of this recording, the situation is still developing, and the investigation continues. Authorities in Texas say that 4 people are dead this week, including the gunman, following a disturbing shooting spree across 2 cities that was initially mistaken for a road rage attack. The chaos began around 12:30 p.m. on October 8th, when officers with the Sugar Land Police Department responded to reports of gunfire along Derry-Ashford Road near Highway 90. They arrived to find 47-year-old Shelley Perot from Rosenberg slumped in the driver's seat of a white SUV that had veered off the road. Shelley had been shot multiple times. Witnesses and responding officers performed CPR until EMS arrived, but she was later pronounced dead at Ben Taub Hospital. At first, investigators believed the case was an act of road rage. However, they later confirmed that Shelley and the suspect, identified as 42-year-old William Lewis, were in a relationship and that the shooting was not random. And unfortunately, things were about to get even worse. Just an hour after Shelley's killing, Houston police received another call, this time from a mechanic shop on the 13,000 block of Fondren Road in Houston. Witnesses said a man had arrived at the shop in a gray SUV and got into a heated argument with a 51-year-old mechanic. After fatally shooting the employee, Lewis noticed that the shop owner, 35-year-old Hector Vasquez, was filming him, at which point he shot and killed him as well. Surveillance footage from nearby businesses reportedly shows Lewis chasing one of the victims before firing. Minutes later, around 2 p.m., police were called to another scene on the 8,000 block of Creek Bend Drive, roughly 3 miles from the second crime scene. There, officers found the same gray SUV, and inside it, the suspected gunman, dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Investigators now say Lewis's rampage began with the killing of Shelley in Sugar Land before he drove into southwest Houston to continue his attacks. Authorities say the events unfolded so rapidly that officers in both cities were still processing one scene when the next shooting occurred. Both the Sugar Land and Houston police departments are coordinating on the investigation, which temporarily shut down multiple major roadways during the manhunt. Officials have not released an official motive, but have confirmed the case stemmed from domestic violence rather than random road rage. That being said, no motive has been released behind the second attack at the mechanic shop. By late Wednesday evening, police confirmed that 4 people, including William Lewis, were dead, with investigators continuing to piece together the timeline of what they called a senseless and devastating act of violence. An Alabama high school cheerleader who dreamed of becoming a nurse has tragically died this week, days after being shot while attending a bonfire party in a wooded area outside Birmingham. The shooting happened early Sunday morning, October 19th, in the city of Pinson, in a secluded spot known locally as The Pit. According to the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, 27-year-old Stephen Tyler Whitehead arrived at the gathering just after midnight and opened fire after a confrontation with several other attendees. Among those struck was 18-year-old Kimber Mills, a senior at Cleveland High School and member of the school's cheerleading team. Deputies say Whitehead fired multiple rounds after a verbal and physical fight broke out. He was quickly taken into custody and is now charged with 1 count of murder and 3 counts of attempted murder. Witnesses claim no one at the party knew Whitehead. Kimber's sister, Ashley Mills, told a local news outlet that the 27-year-old had approached one of Kimber's friends earlier that night, sparking a confrontation that quickly turned violent. In an interview with reporters, she stated, quote, "He tried talking to one of Kimber's friends. That girl told her boyfriend, and it led to a fight. Kimber was caught in the crossfire." Kimber was shot in the head and leg and rushed to UAB Hospital in Birmingham. Doctors determined she had suffered severe brain injuries that could not be surgically treated. Her family said she was kept alive on an assisted breathing machine, but her condition was irreversible. 3 other people were also injured, including 21-year-old Silas McKay, who was reportedly shot 10 times while trying to protect Kimber and her friends. In his own interview with local media from his hospital bed, he stated, quote, "My buddy and I found him and started fighting him. I grabbed him and had him on the ground, but when I let go, he pulled his gun and started shooting. I look at her like a little sister. I tried everything I could." According to reports, McKay is expected to recover from his injuries, though sadly the same could not be said for Kimber Mills. On the evening of October 22nd, Kimber's family announced her passing, writing in a statement on social media, quote, "Our sweet baby sister went to be with the Lord at 7:08 p.m. last night. She had the biggest gathering for an honor walk the doctor has ever seen. She was and is so loved by so many." An honor walk was held Tuesday at UAB Hospital as Kimber's organs were donated, a wish her family said she made long before the tragedy. Kimber was known among classmates as bubbly and bright, balancing her cheerleading and track commitments with her plans to study nursing at the University of Alabama. In another interview, her sister Ashley said, quote, "She had a little spunk to her step. She was full of life." At the time of this recording, Stephen Tyler Whitehead remains in custody at the Jefferson County Jail as investigators continue to piece together what led up to the deadly shooting. A GoFundMe has been launched to help support Kimber's family and the other victims injured in the attack. Disturbing new information has been released in a New Jersey double hit-and-run case this week, nearly a month after a 17-year-old boy was accused of deliberately striking and killing two teenage girls. Late on the afternoon of Monday, September 29th, 17-year-old friends Maria Niotis and Isabella Salas were riding electric bikes in Cranford Township. They were riding along a section of Burnside Avenue, a 25-mile-per-hour residential road, when suddenly they were struck by a black Jeep Compass. That vehicle was allegedly being driven by 17-year-old Vincent Badaloro, who at the time was traveling at least 70 miles per hour. After being hit, Maria and Isabella were rushed to a local hospital, where sadly they were both pronounced dead. According to police, Badaloro fled on foot after deliberately crashing the Jeep. He was detained shortly afterwards for questioning, but was released pending further investigation. It wasn't until 2 days later that Badaloro was finally arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, as well as 15 traffic citations, including for reckless driving, speeding, and driving without a license or insurance. While police had previously revealed that they believed the fatal hit-and-run was intentional, the case has grown significantly darker over the past few weeks. Family members of the 2 victims now say the tragedy followed weeks of escalating stalking and harassment. Brent Bramnick, attorney for Maria's family, told the media during interviews that Badaloro swatted Maria and her family's home twice between September 1st and 15th. For those unfamiliar, swatting refers to the act of making fraudulent calls to emergency services, often about violent or dangerous incidents, in order to prompt a large armed police response. During one of those incidents, officers found Badaloro parked nearby. Maria's mother identified him to police, but he was released to his father that same night. After the fatal crash, Maria's mother, Fula, accused local authorities of failing to act on her earlier reports. She also stated she believes the reason police didn't do anything is because Badaloro is the nephew of Christopher Badaloro, the chief of police for the nearby town of Westfield. Badaloro's father was also a law enforcement officer before retiring in December of 2024. In an interview, Fula said she believes the 17-year-old thought he was untouchable, stating, quote, "They should have done a lot. They didn't do anything to help my baby. I just want justice for Maria and Isabella." The case has drawn even more attention because just hours after the alleged double murder, Badaloro reportedly took to his YouTube channel where he discussed the case as well as his apparent motivations. Referring to himself as a, quote, "nice kid," he claimed that he was, quote, "bullied and ridiculed over false allegations," and that, quote, "there's more to this story." This was far from the only time that Badaloro took to social media to elicit sympathy and claim that he is the real victim in all of this. According to reports, he recorded a series of live streams in the weeks and months leading up to the fatal hit-and-run, complaining about Maria and her family. In addition to allegedly stalking and harassing Maria, he also reportedly ordered pizzas to her home, live streaming that as well. Following the tragedy, Westfield Police Chief Christopher Badaloro came out to reiterate that the accused killer is his nephew, not his son. In a statement, he also added, quote, "In no way do my wife, children, or I condone, defend, or excuse the actions that caused this terrible and tragic loss of life. I demand full accountability and justice." While the charges against Badaloro are quite serious, many remain outraged that this case has yet to be moved from the juvenile system to adult court. For the families of Maria and Isabella, they see it as another sign of law enforcement attempting to protect their own family members. At the time of this recording, the circumstances surrounding the entire incident are still under investigation. Authorities in Michigan say that a 35-year-old nanny has been charged with first-degree murder after allegedly stabbing her employer's father to death with a screwdriver, then running naked through the neighborhood covered in blood while chasing another family member and a toddler. According to investigators, the horrific incident unfolded on Friday, October 24th, in a quiet residential area of Royal Oak, just outside of Detroit. Police say the nanny in question, Samantha Booth, had been babysitting a 3-year-old girl when she appeared to suffer a sudden manic episode inside the family's home. When Booth stopped answering calls and texts from the child's parents, who were out of town, they asked the girl's grandfather, 83-year-old David Ong, to stop by and check in on things. Not long after Ong arrived, communication with him also abruptly stopped. Concerned, the toddler's uncle went to the house, only to find a nightmarish scene in the basement. Booth was allegedly covered in blood and holding a screwdriver near the child and Ong's body, who had sustained multiple head wounds. Police say that when the uncle tried to intervene, Booth lunged at him, forcing him to fend off several attacks before he was able to grab the little girl and run outside. Witnesses say Booth then chased the uncle and young girl down the street while screaming and wielding the screwdriver. In a statement afterwards, Royal Oak Police Chief Michael Moore told reporters, quote, "She was actually chasing him down the street as he was screaming for help. Neighbors heard it and ushered him and the child inside. She attacked the victim repeatedly with a screwdriver, an absolutely horrific crime." When officers arrived, Booth was still in the area behaving erratically. Investigators say she stripped off her clothes and attempted to flee before being tackled and taken into custody. Police later found suspected psychedelic mushrooms and marijuana in her bag, though it's unclear whether she was under the influence of either drug at the time. According to the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office, Booth confessed to the killing after her arrest, allegedly telling officers from the back seat of a squad car, quote, "I f***ed him the f*** up, and yes, I did it. God, it was too easy." She has been charged with first-degree murder, second-degree child abuse, felony assault, and 3 counts of resisting and obstructing police. Prosecutors say Booth had been the family's nanny for 2 years and had no prior criminal record. She was arraigned on October 28th, but refused to appear on camera during a virtual hearing, stripping in her cell and lying on the floor. A not guilty plea was entered on her behalf, and she was denied bond. David Ong's family, meanwhile, has described him as a gentle, kind man who died protecting his granddaughter. In a tribute posted online, his daughter wrote, quote, "Anyone who knows my dad knows that he is a gentle giant, a man of incredible kindness, love, and faith. The loss is immeasurable." Booth remains in custody and is scheduled to appear in court again on November 7th.
Representatives from Kansas's Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office say that a former TV news anchor has been arrested and is facing charges this week following a disturbing Halloween murder in which she allegedly killed her own elderly mother, then gave a bizarre excuse for her actions. The whole thing began at around 8 a.m. on October 31st when a couple driving through a quiet neighborhood in Wichita were suddenly stopped in the middle of the road by an alarming scene. A woman, later identified as 47-year-old Angeline Mock, came staggering out of her nearby home. She was covered in blood, approached the couple's vehicle, and asked to borrow a phone to call 911. The startled couple handed over one of their phones, at which point Mock reportedly ran back inside the house. Once there, she called police, making a chilling confession. The 47-year-old claimed she had, quote, stabbed her mother to save herself. Despite the claim of self-defense, when officers arrived at the scene, they found Mock standing outside in no apparent danger. She had cuts to her hands, but that was nothing compared to what police found inside. Upon entering the home, they found Mock's 80-year-old mother, Anita Avers, lying unresponsive in her bed. She had suffered multiple stab wounds, and though she was rushed to a nearby hospital, sadly, she died just 30 minutes later. At the time of this recording, almost no additional information is available about the crime, including a motive or what might have happened in the lead-up to the killing. However, what we do know is that Angeline Mock has been arrested on a charge of first-degree murder. According to reports, the 47-year-old once had a successful news career. From 2011 to 2015, she was a morning and evening fill-in anchor for KTVI Fox 2, which is based out of St. Louis, Missouri. As for her mother, Anita, she spent her career working as a marriage and family therapist. At the time of this recording, Mock remains in custody on a $1 million bond.
Authorities in upstate New York say that a 30-year-old man is facing murder and arson charges in connection with a truly heinous crime this week, after he allegedly killed his girlfriend and newborn son before setting their apartment on fire with all of them inside. The disturbing case began on the morning of October 18th, when the Buffalo Fire Department received reports of a blaze at an apartment on Norwood Avenue around 8:35 a.m. When firefighters arrived, they found the home engulfed in flames. Once inside, they made a heartbreaking discovery. 29-year-old Kathleen Katie Carrig and her 4-day-old son Noah were both found unresponsive. Despite rescue efforts, both Katie and baby Noah were pronounced dead at the scene. The fire, which investigators say caused roughly $100,000 in damage, was later determined to be intentionally set. Also found at the scene was Katie's boyfriend, 30-year-old Kadani Hale, who was rescued from the burning home and transported to a nearby hospital to be treated for smoke inhalation. Following an investigation, the Erie County Medical Examiner ruled Katie's death a homicide caused by asphyxia due to strangulation. Prosecutors alleged that Hale killed Katie before deliberately starting the fire with gasoline. Hale was discharged from the hospital on October 22nd and immediately taken into custody. He was indicted and arraigned the next day on one count of second-degree murder in connection with Katie's death. Following further investigation, Noah's death was also declared a homicide, the result of, quote, asphyxiation and/or thermal injuries. On October 30th, Hale was slapped with several more charges, including first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and third-degree arson. According to reports, Hale worked as a college financial aid advisor at the University of Buffalo. In a statement, the university extended condolences to the victim's family, saying it was, quote, aware of the serious charge against Kadani Hale, and noted that it has a disciplinary process in place for employees accused of criminal activity. District Attorney Michael J. Keene called the case, quote, a tragic death of a young mother and her newborn baby, adding that his office is committed to pursuing justice for both victims. An obituary described Katie as a devoted and loving mother, daughter, sister, and friend, someone remembered for her kindness and compassion. Unfortunately, right now, we have essentially no insight into why this awful incident took place. However, authorities confirmed Hale is being held without bail, and if convicted, faces a maximum sentence of 25 years to life in prison. Police in Texas released details in connection with a truly nightmarish case this week, after a woman was recently found half naked and chained in a backyard at a property where she had allegedly been held captive for months. According to the Austin Police Department, officers responded to a 911 call around 9 a.m. on October 30th after a resident reported hearing a woman screaming for help at a neighboring home on the city's south side. When they arrived, they discovered the female victim shackled to metal exercise equipment in the backyard, naked from the waist down and suffering from severe injuries. Due to the heavy restraints, officers were unable to free the woman on their own and called in the Austin Fire Department for assistance. Firefighters used specialized equipment to cut through the metal and release her. Police said that the woman showed, quote, visible injuries consistent with prolonged restraint, and said that she appeared to be malnourished. As first responders worked to rescue her, 5 adults inside the house attempted to flee, but were quickly detained. They were identified as 51-year-old Michelle Garcia, her daughters, 21-year-old Crystal Garcia and 32-year-old Masha Carney, Carney's husband, 30-year-old Juan Pablo Castro, and a family friend, 21-year-old Maynard Lefevers. All 5 were charged with aggravated kidnapping, aggravated assault, injury to an elderly or disabled person, and unlawful restraint. Investigators said several small children were also found living in the home and were placed in the care of Child Protective Services. According to an affidavit obtained by local media, the victim told police she had been friends with Michelle Garcia for years, but said that the group decided they no longer liked her and began keeping her captive. She said she was forced to live outside for weeks, beaten whenever she tried to escape, and given only 1 plate of food a day. Michelle Garcia reportedly told officers she limited the woman's meals because she thought the victim had become chunky. Investigators, however, said the woman appeared severely underweight and dehydrated. The victim also said that the night before her rescue, her pants had slipped down and she, quote, got in trouble. As punishment, she was shot with a BB gun, handcuffed to a metal punching bag stand, and left half naked overnight in temperatures that dropped to only a few degrees above freezing. During her captivity, she suffered extensive injuries, including open wounds, swollen wrists, and scarring from BB pellets. Doctors later found a BB lodged in her right eye. Castro allegedly admitted to purchasing an electric BB rifle to shoot her because he, quote, didn't want to touch her. He told investigators he would come home from work, grab the gun, and, quote, chase her around the yard, saying he fucking hates her. A 4-year-old child, identified as Castro's son, told police he watched his father shoot the woman whenever she was, quote, bad, and that his mother, Carney, would often stand by and watch. The child said the woman's screams could be heard all the way from inside the home. The suspects told investigators that they had known the victim for years and claimed she had agreed to be restrained. Carney told police they handcuffed the woman to prevent her from stealing and said neighbors had complained about her behavior. Crystal Garcia described the victim as, quote, 50-50 capable of consent, according to the affidavit. Detectives said the household followed a routine of feeding the woman once a day and keeping her chained to the exercise stand, sometimes with both wrists locked behind her back. All 5 suspects are being held at the Travis County Jail on $305,000 bonds. Authorities confirmed that 3 young children have been safely removed from the home and that the case remains under investigation. Authorities in Minnesota say that a 40-year-old factory worker has been arrested and charged this week after allegedly beating a 20-year-old co-worker to death with a sledgehammer, a shocking early morning attack that investigators say he had been planning for some time. According to the Wright County Attorney's Office, David Bruce DeLong was taken into custody Monday, November 10th and charged with second-degree intentional murder after killing his colleague, Amber Check, at Advanced Process Technologies, a fabrication facility that works with the dairy industry in the city of Cokato. Police say that the attack happened around 6 a.m., with surveillance footage capturing DeLong leaving his workstation inside the plant, walking directly to Amber's work area, grabbing a sledgehammer and striking her in the head without warning. The 20-year-old immediately collapsed to the concrete floor. However, DeLong allegedly continued, hitting her at least 4 more times. After the attack, DeLong reportedly approached another employee and chillingly said, quote, I hit her with your hammer. She is by your toolbox. She is gone. Officers found the blood-covered sledgehammer beside Amber, who died at the scene from blunt force trauma and blood loss. According to charging documents, DeLong admitted to investigators that he, quote, didn't like Amber and had been planning to kill her. He apparently didn't offer any clear indication as to why, though, beyond telling authorities that she had, quote, kind of given him a bad look and he was upset about that. That so-called bad look reportedly happened on a completely different day some time ago, and authorities said that there was no indication Amber was aware she was in danger. Amber, who lived in the city of Hutchinson, worked as a welder at the factory and was remembered by loved ones as an outgoing, hardworking young woman and a talented tradesperson. She discovered her passion for welding in high school and later graduated from Alexandria Technical and Community College in 2024 after completing its welding technology program. The killing has devastated the local community and forced a shutdown of production at Advanced Process Technologies. Administrative staff are working remotely while police continue their investigation. The company issued a statement saying, quote, we are heartbroken by yesterday's tragedy, and our thoughts are with the victim's family and friends in this terrible moment. We're also making sure our employees have the support they need and working closely with law enforcement as they continue their investigation. Wright County Attorney Brian Lutz said he intends to present the case to a grand jury for a possible upgrade to first-degree premeditated murder, which carries a mandatory life sentence in Minnesota. Authorities in Illinois say that a man with a lengthy criminal history has been arrested once again this week after a young woman was set on fire aboard a Chicago subway train in what federal prosecutors are now calling an act of terrorism. The incident happened on Monday night, November 17th, at around 9:25 p.m., as the 26-year-old victim, Bethany McGee, was riding a Chicago Transit Authority Blue Line train near Clark Lake Station. Early police reports initially stated that Bethany was arguing with the male suspect, but federal prosecutors later confirmed that the attack was completely unprovoked. According to charging documents, surveillance footage shows 50-year-old Lawrence Reed boarding the train after filling a bottle with gasoline at a nearby gas station roughly 20 minutes earlier. Reed walked from the back of the train towards Bethany, who was seated and using her phone with her back turned to him. The footage then shows Reed removing the cap from the bottle and pouring the gasoline over her head and body. Investigators say Bethany tried to escape, but Reed caught up to her and ignited the liquid. Prosecutors allege Reed first tried to light the gasoline directly before lighting the bottle itself, dropping it, picking it back up while it was burning, and using it to set Bethany on fire. Within a matter of seconds, Bethany was fully engulfed in flames, running towards the front of the train and desperately trying to extinguish herself by rolling on the ground. When the train reached the Clark Lake platform, she ran out while still on fire. 2 bystanders rushed to her aid and helped put out the flames before firefighters arrived. Witnesses later described the horrifying moments they saw Bethany collapse and hyperventilate on the platform, with significant burns to her head and body. The 26-year-old was taken to a hospital in critical condition, and at the time of this recording remains hospitalized with life-threatening injuries. Reed fled the train, but was captured on camera walking away. Investigators recovered a partially melted bottle and a lighter from the train car, as well as what appeared to be burned pieces of Bethany's clothing. Additional video footage showed Reed purchasing gasoline shortly before the attack. Chicago police arrested Reed the following morning near Washington Street. He was still wearing the same clothes from the night of the attack and had burn injuries on his right hand. While being transported to the detective division, investigators say Reed repeatedly yelled, quote, "Burn," and "burn alive." Reed has a criminal history spanning more than 30 years, with at least 72 arrests and about 15 convictions, including cases involving arson, property damage, and drug trafficking. Prosecutors say he had recently been released from custody following an unrelated aggravated battery case and had been previously accused of setting a fire at the Thompson Center in 2020 while people were inside the building. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives took Reed into federal custody Wednesday. He has been charged with committing a terrorist attack against a mass transportation system, a charge that could make him eligible for the death penalty if convicted. U.S. Attorney Andrew Boutros called the attack barbaric and said it, quote, "strikes at the core of our American way of life." Authorities confirmed they will seek Reed's continued detention, citing his repeated reoffending, extensive arrest record, and the extreme danger he poses to the community. However, given Reed's extensive criminal history and his many convictions, many are now questioning why he was out on the streets in the first place, especially since, according to the latest media reports, it seems he had a documented history of severe mental health issues and violence. In August, he was in court after allegedly knocking out a social worker at a psychiatric hospital where he had been committed. The attack reportedly left the worker with, quote, "likely optic nerve damage and a concussion, causing her to experience memory issues, headaches, and daily nausea." Despite this, Reed was released with nothing but an electronic ankle monitor, and it's unclear if he was given any further psychiatric treatment. At a court appearance following this week's incident, the 50-year-old disrupted the proceedings constantly, singing, talking to himself incoherently, and repeatedly shouting, quote, "I plead guilty." He also apparently claimed to be a Chinese citizen. At the time of this recording, the investigation is ongoing, and no further updates have been provided on the status of Bethany McGee. Police in Fayette County, Illinois say that they are investigating a truly horrifying case this week after a teenage girl was found dead inside of an RV behind her home, and a 43-year-old man with a long history of violent offenses is now charged with her murder. The victim, identified as 14-year-old Kylie Toberman, was reported missing on Friday, November 14th, prompting an immediate alert from local police. Kylie had been living with her adoptive mother, Donna Toberman, and her 2 younger sisters in the small city of Vandalia. Roughly 8 hours after she was reported missing, officers searched the property where Kylie was living and discovered her body inside of a blue tote bag in an RV parked behind the home. The RV belonged to 43-year-old Arnold Rivera, identified by the family as Kylie's step-uncle, who had been living there and acting as her caretaker while her adoptive mother was receiving medical treatment. Prosecutors say Rivera sexually assaulted Kylie in a car before strangling her with jumper cables. Charging documents read aloud in court described how he then placed her body inside the tote and hid it in his RV. Speaking about the devastating case on Facebook, Kylie's biological mother, Megan Zeller, said, quote, "I will not shut up or stop till my child gets justice." Illinois State Police announced Rivera's arrest on Monday, November 17th. He has been charged with first-degree murder, aggravated criminal sexual assault, and concealing a homicidal death. Prosecutors told the court that Rivera poses a danger to the community, and a judge denied his pretrial release. Court records reviewed by multiple media outlets revealed Rivera's extensive criminal history dating back to 2000, including other sickening offenses committed against minors. Though it seems that the most serious charges against him were dismissed, he pleaded guilty to felony aggravated battery and was also involved in other crimes, including possessing a stolen vehicle in 2008. Loved ones and community members reacted with shock and heartbreak to this week's awful revelations. Kylie's paternal grandmother, Lisa Richards, said, quote, "We were just now educated on the manner of her death and the disrespect to her body, and it should never have happened." Friends described Kylie as brilliant, energetic, and deeply loving towards animals and her siblings. She was a junior high school wrestler, recently voted most improved on her team, with her close friend Caitlin Schellenbarger stating, quote, "She was the sweetest, kindest person. She had so much life left to live. She was only 14. According to local news media, Kylie had made multiple reports to the Department of Children and Family Services about her situation at home, and her friends say that those reports were not taken seriously. Her friend Caitlin added, quote, "If they can't speak up for themselves because they're too scared, nothing gets done at all." While the specifics of exactly what was going on in the home has not been commented on by police at this time, one woman who claims to have information has since come forward. In an interview with local media, that woman, Paige Stone, told reporters that she knows how much of a predator Arnold Rivera really is. Speaking to reporters, Paige stated, quote, "I was 14 when I met that man. I was the babysitter. He was married with 2 kids. She said that by the age of 17, she was pregnant with Rivera's child and that he took her out of state to get married. She continued, quote, "He took me to Utah. He bought me a bus ticket. He drove to Utah. At that time, I was 17, so he knew how to manipulate the laws and how to get control over me." Paige said that she eventually divorced Rivera, though her children continued to live with him at the same property where Kylie was allegedly killed. According to her, quote, "The house was full of dogs, dog feces, and dog urine." She said that her daughter expressed concerns for Kylie, and Paige also reported the situation to DCFS back in January, but that little to nothing was done. For their part, the department responded with a statement, writing, quote, "At the request of the Fayette County State's Attorney, DCFS cannot comment on law enforcement's active criminal investigation, but can confirm that after Kylie was adopted in 2018, she was no longer a youth in care of DCFS. To further clarify, Mr. Rivera was not Kylie's guardian, nor did he live in the same home as her." As you might imagine, though, this has done little to quell the outrage and questions surrounding the case. While Kylie may not have been directly in Rivera's care, the fact that he was living in an RV behind the house and not physically in the home itself has struck many as a distinction without a difference. Especially, again, considering those reports that Rivera was the only adult at the property while Kylie's adopted mother was receiving medical treatment. At the time of this recording, the entire situation is still under investigation, though Kylie's loved ones say that they feel she was completely failed by the system. In the meantime, Rivera will remain in custody while he awaits trial. Federal investigators have released disturbing new information in connection with the alleged murder of a high school cheerleader aboard a cruise ship earlier this month, announcing that her 16-year-old stepbrother is now being treated as a suspect in the case. According to reports, the whole thing started on the night of November 6th, when 18-year-old Florida high school senior Anna Kepner was on a 6-day Caribbean vacation with several of her family members. Her father, Christopher Kepner, stepmother Chantel Hudson, 4 siblings and step-siblings, as well as her grandparents, were all aboard a Carnival cruise ship for what was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime. That evening, Anna reportedly left dinner early, telling her family she wasn't feeling well and was going back to the cabin she shared with her 14-year-old brother and 16-year-old stepbrother. Sadly, it was the last time that most of them would ever see her alive. According to a source close to the investigation, later that night, Anna's younger brother changed clothes and left again to take pictures around the ship. When he returned, he noticed Anna wasn't in bed, but assumed she had just gone out with the adults and fell asleep, not realizing his sister's body was already hidden just feet away. Surveillance video later confirmed that Anna returned to the cabin after dinner and was never seen leaving again. The next morning, when Anna still hadn't reappeared, her family panicked. While her father searched the massive ship, a medical emergency was announced. A cleaning crew had discovered Anna's body shoved under her bed, wrapped in a blanket, and surrounded by life jackets. The FBI, which has jurisdiction because the death occurred in international waters, boarded the Carnival Horizon when it docked in Miami on November 7th. While no official cause of death has yet been released, the family told local media that they had been informed Anna died from asphyxiation, possibly caused by an armbar hold across the neck. Since then, court filings have filled in other details, revealing that Anna's 16-year-old stepbrother, identified only by the initials TH, is being investigated in connection with the killing. No charges have yet been filed, though reports state that the teen is currently living with a relative of his mother and was reportedly hospitalized for psychiatric evaluation immediately after the incident for undisclosed reasons. More information was provided by an ex-boyfriend of Anna's who came forward and spoke to local media following the tragedy. The man, who described the 18-year-old as his first love, said that Anna's stepbrother made her uncomfortable. He also claimed that he had witnessed the 16-year-old climbing on top of her during a late-night FaceTime call, and that Anna told him she was frightened of him. Amidst all of this, what has also emerged is a portrait of a messy family situation. According to reports, Anna's stepmother, Chantel Hudson, is currently embroiled in a lengthy custody dispute with her former husband, Thomas Hudson, the father of the 16-year-old suspect. She has accused her former partner of domestic and physical abuse toward his children and noted he is under active investigation by the Florida Department of Children and Families. Thomas, in turn, accused Chantel and her husband, Christopher, of violence, alienation, and keeping his children from him. It appears the turmoil is not limited to one side of the family either. According to Anna's mother, Heather Wright, she learned about her daughter's death through a Google search. She said she was never contacted by Anna's father, Christopher Kepner, despite numerous desperate attempts to reach out and figure out what was going on. She claims she was also barred from Anna's memorial service by Christopher and told that Anna would not have wanted her there. While many questions remain unanswered, what is clear is that Anna's death has come as a complete shock to those that loved her. The 18-year-old, who was set to graduate from high school this coming May, was planning to join the Navy and hoped to one day become a police officer with the K-9 unit. Hundreds of mourners gathered Thursday at the Grove Church in Titusville, Florida, to celebrate Anna's life. A slideshow played images from childhood through her senior year, karate classes, cheerleading fundraisers, beach days, and time with friends. Guests were invited to leave a fingerprint on a poster in her memory. The FBI's investigation remains active and no charges have been filed. The stepbrother's current location is undisclosed at the direction of child welfare authorities.
Authorities in the city of Stockton, California are investigating a devastating mass shooting this week after gunfire erupted during a family gathering at a local banquet hall, leaving 4 people dead, including multiple children, and at least 11 others wounded. The tragedy unfolded on Saturday, November 29th, shortly before 6 p.m., when deputies were called to the 1900 block of Lucille Avenue for reports of shots fired inside a crowded event space. According to the San Joaquin County Sheriff's Office, a total of 15 people were struck by gunfire. Tragically, 3 of the victims who died were very young, just 8, 9, and 14 years old. The final deceased victim was 21. Adding to the horror, deputies say the shooting took place during a child's birthday party. That party was attended by an estimated 100 to 150 guests, and early reports suggest the attack was targeted. Currently, though, no suspects have been identified and the shooter or shooters remain at large. When deputies and firefighters arrived at the scene, they found chaos both inside and outside the building. Sheriff Patrick Withrow said the gunfire appears to have started inside the banquet hall before continuing into an outdoor area. Multiple vehicles with bullet holes were towed away as evidence, and several firearms were later found on the roof of the building, though investigators have not confirmed whether they were used in the attack. A spokesperson for the sheriff's office said detectives are still working to determine a motive. Officials described the crime scene as one of the most horrific the county has seen in years. During a press conference, Sheriff Withrow stated, quote, These animals walked in and shot children at a children's birthday party. None of us should stand for that. Stockton Vice Mayor Jason Lee echoed the sentiment, saying he was devastated and angry that an event meant as a celebration for kids had turned into a massacre. Investigators with the California Department of Justice and the FBI responded to assist with processing the scene. Authorities are reviewing surveillance footage, interviewing witnesses, and encouraging the public to come forward with any photos or videos from the event. Sheriff Withrow emphasized that the attack does not appear to have been random and suggested that it might have been gang-related. At least one of the surviving victims remained in critical condition as of Sunday. The conditions of the other injured victims have not been released. Sheriff Withrow said shell casings, bullets, and weapons found at the scene are still being processed, and investigators are working to determine if anyone at the party may have returned fire. At the time of this recording, no arrests have been made, and detectives are urging anyone with information to contact the San Joaquin County Sheriff's Office immediately. The investigation remains active and developing.
What should have been a time of celebration instead turned into an awful nightmare for the friends and family of 2 National Guard members this week, when they were the victims of a disturbing shooting ambush in Washington, D.C., a crime that left one of them dead and the other in critical condition, and which is now being investigated as a possible terror attack. The situation unfolded on the day before Thanksgiving, November 26th, near Farragut Square. Members of the West Virginia National Guard had been deployed to the area as part of the Trump administration's purported plan to crack down on crime, and were stationed near several of the city's metro stations. Among them were 20-year-old Sarah Beckstrom and 24-year-old Andrew Wolf, who were on duty near Farragut West Metro Station. At roughly 2:15 p.m., out of nowhere, the guards were ambushed by a shooter. According to authorities, the gunman was lying in wait behind a corner before suddenly coming around and opening fire. Sarah Beckstrom was shot in the chest and head, while Andrew Wolf was hit in several places. It's estimated the shooter fired between 10 and 15 times before he was also shot by other National Guard members and hauled away from the scene. While Sarah and Andrew were both rushed to local hospitals, their injuries were incredibly severe. Sadly, Sarah passed away the following day, and at the time of this recording, Andrew is still fighting for his life. The alleged gunman, meanwhile, was quickly identified as 29-year-old Ramanallah Lochinwall. Lochinwall is originally from Afghanistan, but had been living in Bellingham, Washington since 2021, when he was allowed entry to the U.S. as part of Operation Allies Welcome. The program was meant to resettle Afghan citizens whose lives were in danger following the U.S. withdrawal from the country, especially those who had fought alongside American troops during the conflict. According to reports, Lochinwall was a member of a so-called Zero Unit, an elite and secret group of Afghan forces that were trained by the CIA. Under their direction, Zero Units were responsible for hunting down Taliban commanders and took part in especially dangerous missions. As a result, they were considered not only some of the most vulnerable targets once the Taliban re-established control over Afghanistan, but apparently some of the most vetted in terms of their backgrounds. After arriving in the United States, Lochinwall eventually applied for asylum, which was granted in April of 2025. Though Lochinwall's motives behind the chilling shooting currently remain unknown, that hasn't stopped many from speculating wildly about the case online. And as a result, as has become increasingly commonplace as of late, the tragedy has transformed into yet another political flashpoint. The Trump administration was quick to blame the Biden administration for letting Lochinwall into the country, alleging that because of the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan, he was among thousands who were never properly vetted before coming into the country. However, as previously mentioned, Lochinwall specifically would have been vetted by U.S. intelligence before ever being allowed to join a Zero Unit. On top of this, many pointed out that it was the Trump administration itself that granted Lochinwall's asylum claim. In other words, if no vetting was done, they were the ones that failed to do it. Nevertheless, the Trump administration has cited this week's tragedy as a justification for pausing all asylum claims, with the president himself going further and stating he plans to permanently pause all migration from, quote, third world countries. Conversely, critics of the administration have argued that the National Guard never should have been deployed to D.C. in the first place, particularly troops from out of state. The issue is currently the subject of ongoing legal battles, though it's still unclear how this will ultimately turn out. At the same time, reports are emerging that Lochinwall's mental health had been sharply declining for over a year in the lead up to the crime. Some of these reports state that it's believed he was suffering from severe PTSD and was unable to hold down a job and had isolated himself from his wife and children. Several sources state that a refugee group actually warned officials about the 29-year-old's mental state, though it's unclear to what extent this was followed up on. What is clear, though, is that the lives of two young people and their loved ones have been forever changed as a result of this week's attack. In the case of Sarah Beckstrom, her life had only just begun, adding to the horrible weight of the tragedy. As for Lochinwall, he currently remains in custody and is facing numerous charges, including first-degree murder. However, more charges could still be added, especially as officials continue to investigate the case as a possible act of terror. Hey there. Before you take off, we'd just like to take a second and say that we really appreciate you sticking around to the end of the video. Luke and I are so grateful for our incredible Crime Zone community, so thank you for being a part of it. If you want to help Crime Zone continue to grow, one of the easiest things you can do is leave a like on this video and consider subscribing. Be sure to hit that notification bell as well and select all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to support the channel, there are a couple of options. We've got a thriving community over on Patreon, where you can get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. Head over to patreon.com/crimezone to learn more and to meet some of the awesome people whose names are currently on screen. If that isn't your thing, we've also now launched channel memberships so you can join directly here on YouTube. Channel members get a lot of the same perks as on Patreon, including extra content, without the added hassle of having to go off-platform. Now, that being said, we know times are tough and that not everyone is able to support financially. Regardless of your situation, though, we want you to know that we truly appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much, and we hope to see you soon.